President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the 2018 Freedom Day celebrations at the Dr. Molemela Stadium in Bloemfontein later this morning. The Battle Northwest Province has denied knowledge of a cabinet decision to place the collapsed provincial health department under administration. Motorists are bracing for a sharp hike in fuel prices as the national bus strike continues to hamper commuters.
And in sport later, the International Athletics Federation has taken to Twitter to defend its new rule regarding athletes with hypoandrogenism, saying it's neither racist or targeting one or two individuals.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom. A very happy Freedom Day to all watching. I'm Shante Yankisa. Coming up this hour, South Africa, of course, is celebrating Freedom Day. 24 years ago on this day in 1994, millions of people stood in long queues to cast their vote in the first historic democratic election. Do you remember where you were? Well, we will be having a look at some of your comments. Valen is also standing by with your sporting highlights this morning. Very good morning to you, Valen.
A very good morning to you, Shante. Good to be with you on a significant day here in South Africa as we celebrate along with the rest of the country our Freedom Day. I hope that you're enjoying your public holiday, and I'll be bringing you the latest when it comes to the sport at 1:15 to the top of the hour, every hour here on Newsroom. But first, it's back to Shante for your top story.
Leading at the top of the hour, President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the 2018 Freedom Day celebrations at the Dr. Molemela Stadium in Bloemfontein later this morning. The day's celebrations are dedicated to the founding fathers of South Africa's democracy, Nelson Mandela, and struggle icon Albertina Sisulu. Both would have been 100 years old this year. South Africans remember Freedom Day for the first post-apartheid elections held in 1994. Tabiso Radebe filed the story.
Workers putting finishing touches to the venue. This to celebrate one of the historic days in the country's calendar. But according to some, there is little to celebrate the day.
We are still complaining about waters, toilets. As old people, we can't fetch water from a certain place. We are so sick.
Freedom is good, but we are not have the freedom which we are looking about, just because some of the time we fail to, the deans were not corrected.
Yeah, we have rights, we have education, we have shelters, but not as we see now, but we have shelter.
Meanwhile, authorities say they are on standby for any eventualities.
If you look at it from the security point of view, the security cluster has been sitting with the national, province and ourselves. Now we are comfortable with all the security plans that have been made for the coming of the president in addressing the Freedom Day celebrations. Thousands
are expected to fill up the 20,000 capacity stadium. This year's Freedom Day marks 24 years into democracy. Tabiso Khadebe, SABC News, Bloemfontein.
Well, 92-year-old Rivonia Treason trialist Andrew Mlangeni has called on the country's leaders to emulate and practice what the struggle stalwarts fought for as the country celebrates Freedom Day. Well, he was speaking at the Durban University of Technology last night, where he was conferred with an honorary doctorate of an education degree.
This is not what we fought for. This is not what we struggled for. We struggle for the people to be free, people to live in freedom, everybody. But are people free? I said in my speech earlier when I was addressing during the day that a number of our people in our country have still not received Uhuru. They haven't seen what Uhuru is, what Uhuru means, what freedom means. They tell every day they say we are free, but we don't see any freedom. We don't see any changes taking place because some of our leaders I say some, not everyone. Some of our leaders are absolutely corrupt. They have no interest in the people for which some died for. They are only interested in themselves.
Well, the 2018 main Freedom Day celebrations are being held in Bloemfontein today. The celebration will highlight former President Nelson Mandela and struggle stalwart Albertina Sisulu, who would have both turned 100 this year. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the main event at the Dr. Molamela Stadium in Rocklands at noon today. SABC's Aldrin Sampe joins us now from Bloemfontein. Very good morning to you, Aldrin. Very happy Freedom Day to you too. Why do some Rocklands residents, however, say that there is nothing to celebrate today? What is their greatest concern?
Well, yes, good morning and happy Freedom Day to you too. I was actually speaking to one of our colleagues yesterday and we're speaking about 1994. Unfortunately, we weren't old enough to vote in 1994, but he was telling us some of the anecdotes that when they were casting their ballots and the mood that there was in the country at the time, and he was working as a peacekeeper, one of the peacekeepers that are working towards the elections of 27th of April 1994, and this is what we see here today. But just going back to your question as you posed earlier on, I just want to give you a shot of some of the people on the grandstands, those who have made their way here to the stadium, and you'd see that the placards that they carry as well as the posters that they have, which speaks to what Thabiso reported on, residents speaking about while there is freedom and enough freedom to celebrate, they don't feel free, they don't enjoy that freedom because of issues such as water as well as jobs. And you see those placards reading about jobs, and remember that President Cyril Ramaphosa has promised and said that it's possible to create around 500,000 jobs each and every year for young people, and this is why you see these young people as well as students who have come out here today to listen to the President's speech when he delivers the keynote address around about 11:30 this morning. Also an issue around investment. This is quite pertinent because remember, even the President made the announcement, when was it, about 2 weeks ago, where he said that he will be leaving to was it London, when they went for the Commonwealth Summit, and said that they will be seeking a $1 billion investment in the country, and some of those pledges have been coming through from the likes of Theresa May, the Prime Minister of the UK. But certainly much more would be needed if we are to meet those goals set out in the NDP, the National Development Plan, which says that that the economy would need to grow to at least about at least 5% every year if we are to meet the target of reducing the unemployment rate that the country currently faces and reduce it to around 15%. So certainly government has its job cut out. But I was speaking to the Minister of Arts and Culture earlier on, and we'll try and play you that interview a bit later on, where we spoke about today's theme, and that theme centering around realizing the full potential or the full realization of social economic transformation. And of course, you would know that this is in line with the ANC's elective conference resolutions that were taken, and one of those resolutions, of course, being the land expropriation without compensation, and making sure that we see, or the government at least, see this through, as we know that Parliament has already adopted the resolution that the Section 25 of the Constitution must be amended, but the subcommittee that is looking into submissions into the land expropriation without compensation, they start their work next month, if I'm not mistaken. They'll be doing some road shows, and the public is invited to make their inputs with regards to this issue of realizing land expropriation without compensation, and whether Section 25 of the Constitution is an impediment in realizing land expropriation.
Essentially, Aldrin, just some of the sentiments that you had been sharing also on the ground. Since the 27th of April 1994, how far has South Africa actually moved?
Well, it depends really on who you ask about this question. If you speak to the Minister of Arts and Culture, for instance, he will tell you that the country has achieved a lot. You see that we have an increased number of at least the black middle strata that has increased, and that is something that the ANC takes pride in that this has increased. But then, of course, you look at the justice system of this country. There was a documentary, not a documentary, but rather an article that was in the Mail and Guardian yesterday that looked at some of the judges who were presiding over cases that led to the death penalty, where the likes of Solomon Mahlangu was hung. And you know, when you have those justices and you have those judges rather, and you have judges now presiding over cases which actually relate to issues such as racism. That's the reason why you could have the conviction of the likes of Vicky Momberg for making racist remarks and using the K-word and being charged for criminal injuria. And that's because there has been a transition that this country has experienced, whether it is within the judiciary or whether it is within the livelihoods of different South Africans. But at the same time, when you look at these people who are here at the stadium at the moment, those who are carrying these placards saying that they want jobs, they will make the argument that they have not enjoyed the freedom or what was envisaged. That was envisaged when they went to go vote on the 27th of April 1994. And that's the same argument that has been made by the likes of the struggle veteran who was honored yesterday at the University of the Durban University of Technology, Andrew Mlangeni, who says that this is not what we fought for when we fought against colonialism and when we fought against apartheid. This is not what they envisaged when they attained freedom back in 1997. But that interview with the Arts and Culture Minister, which we will play a bit later on, he also speaks about the second phase of the transition. And the second phase of the transition has to do with economic freedom.
Definitely. And, you know, also just having a look at, you know, some of the recent incidents. If we just look at these 2 weeks building up before Freedom Day, the protests that have been taking place down in the Eastern Cape, as well as that in the Northwest. You know, what is the sentiment in being free, but essentially not having a voice, where you have community members saying the only way that we are heard is when we protest, is when we break, is where we show violence?
And this has been something that the ANC government has been accused of, that they do not really respond quite urgently to issues being raised by people, being raised by residents and community members. It's only when they take to the streets, it's only when tires are being burned that you actually do see politicians coming out and then responding to some of these issues. But for instance, if you look at the Northwest issue, you have the president that has now set up the interministerial task team, and one has to say that it was quite quick for the president to have done that. And remember that at the time he was actually on a roadshow. He was part of the roadshow trying to woo potential investors. He was also at the Commonwealth Summit, and he left that summit to come and speak to this issue around the calls on the Premier of the Northwest, Supra Mahumapelo, to resign. So some are saying that he is responding to some of these issues, but the community members, those who have been protesting in the Northwest and calling on Supra Mahumapelo to resign, are saying that not enough is being done. And then the other argument comes into play as well, is how do you follow the process of removing a premier? And the president has been clear that he doesn't have the powers to remove the premier. It is the legislature that has the power to remove the premier, or otherwise the NEC of the ANC could take such a decision to recall the premier.
Definitely. We'll cross back to just a bit. SABC's Aldrin Tampere from Bloemfontein taking us through the Freedom Day celebrations in the Free State. We do know that President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to make a keynote speech around 11:30. We will keep you updated on that. Some other news. New York City is also celebrating a Freedom Day. South African diplomats say they appreciate the support that the international community has played in defeating apartheid. Well, around 200 people gathered to mark the day at the Big Apple. SABC's Sherwin Bryce Peace reports.
The music was well appointed. The late Hugh Masekela's iconic song, in a year both Madiba and Mama Albertina Sisulu would have been 100 years old.
remember the selfless sacrifices of the countless heroes and heroines of our struggle, who fought tirelessly to overcome the brutal apartheid system through dedication. They left an indelible mark on our society, having laid the foundation for a united, non-racial, non-sexist and prosperous society.
He also used the occasion to promote South Africa's bid for a non-permanent seat of the UN Security Council and invoked Madiba's legacy in the future work of the global organization. The UN called it a day to recognize the achievements of South Africa's first black president.
Freedom Day is rightly joyous celebration marking South Africa's triumph over apartheid and the extension of voting rights to millions of people who had been disenfranchised solely because of the color of their skin. This day is also a moment to recognize the achievements of Nelson Mandela and all those who stood with him.
Another highlight was the presence of South Africa's Miss Universe.
As the first born-free Miss South Africa, Freedom Day has always been a very special day to me. I'm happy to be a part of a generation whose responsibility it is to make sure that we keep moving and working forward together.
Happy birthday, South Africa, from everyone in the Big Apple. Sherman Brycebees, SABC News, New York.
Well, 24 years into democracy, since the 27th of April 1994, first democratic elections, we are now joined in studio by political analyst Dr. Piet Abraham Kroukamp. Very good morning to you. Thank you very much for joining us this morning.
Good morning.
You know, essentially looking back to 1994 and where South Africa is today, what are some of the strides that we have made on a positive note?
Well, I think the economy is about 7 times bigger. The stock exchange is much bigger. 5 million more people are working. There are more water, more electricity. I think the ANC has done, in many, many respects, they've done remarkably well. But I'm sure you're going to ask me about, so why are we still such an unhappy society? And I think that is because much of what we associate with apartheid is still very much around. The poverty, the unemployment is still there. The fact that 63% of all black children live in a household where there's only one adult, and in 50% of the cases that adult is not necessarily the parent. Yeah. That is the legacy of apartheid, the legacy of the homeland policy. So apartheid hasn't gone away in 1994. It is still here, and it's very much in our faces, and it determines social relations, economic status, all the things that we try to escape from when we dismantled apartheid is still very much around.
Do you think that there is enough political will that is trying to drive out what you've described now as that legacy of apartheid?
I think there's sufficient political will. I think we have institutional weaknesses. Our ability to execute policy. We have fantastic policies. We have very efficient policies, but our institutional ability to execute those policies are lacking, and the reason why it's lacking has to do with corruption, it has to do with patronage, it has to do with state capture, and it has to do with individual politicians undermining the system from within the inside, from inside. So, but I think it's not possible to say, or I don't think it will be wise to say that there is no political will. I think political will is often undermined by the integrity or the lack of integrity of the institutions of our democracy.
Speaking of which, and speaking of, you know, freedom, you were also listening off air as I was crossing to our reporter Aldrin, and you know, many community members, their plight also in one of our packages is saying that yes, we are free, we have rights to education, we have a right to you know, go where we want to go, but we don't necessarily have the means. We have the right to education, but we don't have the money. We can't afford that. So does then that mean that, you know, freedom somewhat then just comes with being financially free, not necessarily just having rights and access to those rights?
Well, one would like to think so, that what is freedom worth if you live in poverty and if you're unemployed, and that the reasons why you're unemployed has to do with the political system. Because remember, it's not only the people don't create poverty for themselves. It is a condition that they inherit, and quite often they inherit as a generation. My parents were poor, therefore I am poor, and my grandparents were poor and therefore I am poor. So the thing is, in South Africa, democracy has brought massive expectations. And the system must live up to those expectations, and it doesn't. And we have chosen the route to democratize South Africa first, and now we try to develop it economically. China, for instance, and the East Asian tiger economies, they have first developed society economically, and then granted political freedoms over time, which means society were less free politically, but economically there was a degree of satisfaction in the way that people became mobile within the economy. We could have chosen that route. The ANC could have been a lot more authoritarian and would have been a lot more successful in the economy as well. Thabo Mbeki, who I think was more authoritarian than Jacob Zuma, ironically, under him the economy grew at 5%. But trade unions were marginalized. I think many democratic rights were inhibited by this massive, intensive drive for economic growth. Jacob Zuma turned it all around and he induced more political freedom into the system, but the economy, to a large degree, has collapsed under that type of political scenario. So we have to make choices, and we make difficult choices. I am glad I'm not Cyril Ramaphosa, who now have to decide whether you grant political rights or whether you go for economic growth, because you cannot always have both, especially if 9 million of your people are unemployed, if less than 50% of the people are employed in any way, and you have weak systems to enforce whether it's political democracy or economic democracy.
Speaking of which, let's then talk leadership. You know, what we've just seen now take place over the past couple of weeks or days in the Northwest. Community members, they're calling for, of course, Supra Mahmudelo to step down. Let's have a look at, some of the leadership issues, specifically looking around freedom and having, a voice to say that we don't want you as our leader, we don't want you as our premier, we want you to step down. On the other hand, Supra is saying, I haven't been found guilty, let the law do its course.
But it's not only Supra saying so. He's got a significant support base. Many of the meetings that was held over the last 2 days fell apart because there were significant or sufficient numbers of support for Supra Mahmudelo. In other words, it's both sides has significant support, and that's the reason. That's the problem with democracy. If everybody is allowed a voice, it quite often stifle the process of decision making. You will reach the point, and that's what I talk about Ramaphosa, he will reach the point to say, I cannot allow democracy to continue now. I have to make hard decisions and face the political consequences thereof. I have to remove the premier, because regardless of whether he has support or not, there's sufficient instability in that province. There's a lack of medical services in that province. So I have to act in some other way now, and I will have to face the political consequences thereof, because democracy will stifle the process of decision making, and the conflict and the violence may continue as a consequence of that lack of decision making that is now prevalent in that province.
Let's talk about youth having more of a voice. We just saw this past year that legislation being handed down of free higher education going forward. What's the importance of that?
Well, one would like to think it's very important, but the ironic thing about youth participation in politics in South Africa is that it's very, very low. I think around about 35% of the youth really participate in politics. And it goes the same elsewhere in the world. It seems like once people gain economic mobility, once they become middle class, there's a high degree of political participation in any system. So yes, it is true that they have a significant influence over politics as a pressure group in youth leagues. The EFF is almost the youth league of the ANC. And they mostly young people, and they have a massive influence in politics. At universities, students have a big influence in politics. The fees must fall led to the free tertiary education that we have now. So yes, they do have an effect on politics, but they don't participate in the democratic structures as much as they participate in the activist structures. And I think hopefully one can change that in some other way.
How can we change that? Where do you think it needs to be introduced? More at a grassroots level?
Well, I think the EFF is doing it right. They have young people in leadership structures. They have young people leading the party. I think the ANC must seriously consider doing something about their own youth league, because they've marginalized the youth league. And you see it on campuses where the EFF has virtually taken over student politics. Even the DA on some campuses are ruling supreme now. It's because the ANC, to some extent, has deliberately marginalized the youth league, and that's not a good thing for a majority party.
Speaking of the DA, let's talk about their new recall clause that they've added in. What do you make of that?
Well, they have exactly the same problem with that the ANC have, and that is if you have too much democracy, it stifles decision-making. They would like to move on beyond Patricia de Lille, but they can't, for the simple reason that she is protected by the system and the democratic processes within the system, which is a good thing, but for political leadership, it can often lead to a type of a lack of authority, and which then creates instability. Patricia de Lille now creates enormous instability within the DA because she's got certain democratic rights that the party have to honor whether they like it or not.
Just hearing some of the views there from one of the Rivonia trialists, Andrew Mlangeni, saying that this is not the South Africa that himself and Albertina Sisulu and Nelson Mandela had fought for. You know, this is not the country that they had envisioned post-apartheid 10, 20 years. What are your views on, you know, on that statement that he made?
Well, the thing is, we are around about 10 to 15% poorer than we should have been in South Africa, and it has got a lot to do with bad policies. South Africans invest more in Africa than they invest in their own countries because they don't trust the political system here. If you are poor here, around about 15 to 20% percentage points of our labour force who are unemployed have given up looking for work. I saw something on TV the other day. It was one of the most traumatic experiences that I had sitting in front of a TV. There was a black guy around about 35 years old, and he said to the guy he was speaking to, he said, "Sir, I would like to have a job in my lifetime." That is a morbidity. That's giving up. If you say, "I'm 30 years old, I would like to have a job in my lifetime." Yeah. And I think that's where we've let down South Africans. Around about 13% of South Africans have tertiary education. If you have tertiary education, only 5% of them are unemployed. So why can't we get more people into through tertiary education? Only around about, I think, 23-24% of South Africans have matric. It's impossible to be employed in any decent job if you don't have matric. And I think we've let down South Africans in that respect. Education is the one human rights atrocity that we committed post-apartheid.
Yeah, definitely. It's also just touching on labour law. We just recently this week had that national stay away that was headed by SAFTU, of course, now calling for that minimum wage to be 12,500 rand. Of course, COSATU disputing that, saying, you know, that's not feasible.
No, well, the thing is, if you want to create job opportunities, you must attract capital, and they come because they can make a profit. And the middle-sized companies in South Africa now have a profit margin of around about 5.4%, which means if they take their money and they put it in the bank, they make more money. That's why they invest overseas or somewhere else in Africa. That's why they don't create employment opportunities. So that balance between poverty and mobility in a labour market, if we don't get that right, it will always create the type of uncertainty which means that local capital will rather invest in Mauritius and in Zambia and in Namibia than invest in South Africa. We create many, many jobs for people in other countries that we could have created in South Africa. But the minimum wage is an important feature of human dignity. But it's difficult for us to get that mix right. When do we provide human dignity, but at what price can we continue to provide it in the future?
You know, just also looking back at the past couple of years, specifically in broadcasting, let's just also discuss how robust our parliament has been, or it's been described as to be, specifically how we've seen it play out in the media.
Well, the thing is, during both the Mbeki presidency and the Zuma presidency, Parliament, most of our legislators simply didn't do their work of oversight. They have a constitutional obligation to provide oversight, to hold accountable, and to get the executive to do what they should be doing. And I think that was our biggest mistake, where the party loyalty was always much more stronger than the patriotism, the loyalty towards the country for many people sitting in Parliament. And that was the reason why I think President Zuma went off the rails. That's why I think Thabo Mbeki went off the rails. It's because they weren't held accountable. They weren't held responsible for the decisions that they make by the institutions, the legislatures, and eventually society took up that initiative, and it had difficult consequences
Just
for us.
Before we wrap it up, in one or two sentences, what would you say is the greatest threat to our democracy?
It's poverty.
It's
poverty. It will finish off South Africa if we don't solve the problem of poverty.
Definitely. Joining us in studio, political analyst Dr. Piet Abraham Krokamp. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, that is also our question that we're asking here on SABC Newsroom. What is the greatest threat to our democracy? Dr. here saying he thinks that it is poverty. Let's have a look at what South Africa is saying on this Freedom Day. Of course, from 1994 till today, Sivana says racism and wages. Another one coming in, South Africa is still characterized by large societal inequalities and great economic imbalances amongst its citizens. The previously disadvantaged groups are still disadvantaged even now. Therefore, freedom is partially achieved in South Africa. More needs to be done. Michael says, inequality, there will never be peace in our beautiful land as long as the playing field in this game of life is not level, keeping all aspects in mind. Yeah, many agreeing with Dr. Pete. Our poll that we're running this morning, 24 years later, do you think that South Africa has achieved the freedom it desires? Just over 720 votes coming in. Only 17% of you are saying yes. Now the 83% of you are saying no. Let's have a look at some of the reasonings there behind those numbers. Vuyo says they say we have freedom, yet when we address issues that enforces freedom, such as free education and land expropriation, a few elite whites manipulate the rand to silence. Zetso says 24 years into democracy, we are the most unequal society in the world. Andile says we still need economic freedom. Inequality is very high because apartheid structures are still in use. The struggle continues. Actor and comedian Bill Cosby has been convicted of drugging and molesting a woman in 2004 incident at his Philadelphia home and could spend the rest of his remaining years behind bars. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un says the first summit between the two Koreas for more than 10 years will be a starting signal for a new history. Delegations from 72 countries met in Paris at the headquarters of the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development to discuss the means to collectively halt financing of militant groups. Well, the 2018 Main Day Freedom celebrations are being held in Bloemfontein today. The celebration will highlight former President Nelson Mandela and struggle stalwart Albertina Sisulu, who would have both turned 100 this year. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the main event at the Dr. Molamela Stadium in Rocklands at noon today. We'll cross over now to SABC's Aldrin Sampen.
Yes, good morning. We're still here at the stadium as people continue to trickle in and make their ways to the grandstand. As Tabiso indicated earlier on, that they expect around 20,000 people to be here at today's celebration, as we expect President Cyril Ramaphosa to deliver the keynote address. Of course, it will be a very interesting event and a speech to look forward to, because this is the first time that Cyril Ramaphosa, as the Commander-in-Chief, will be delivering a keynote address on Freedom Day. And as I was saying, that it will be quite interesting to hear what the President has to say about personal anecdotes, about the moments leading up to the 27th of April back in 1994, and even the years leading up to that moment, all the discussions that were taking place, behind closed doors, and some turned even violent. And you know, the days leading up to the election of 1994, very, very important, but also quite reminiscent of what the violence that took place at the time. And the Truth and Reconciliation Commission was a commission set up by former President Nelson Mandela to look into some of these atrocities that were committed during apartheid leading up to 1994. And Tumisho Mashaba has put together this insert that looks into some of those anecdotes as well as some of those testimonies. But quite importantly, though, he asked the question, what about those who did not get an opportunity to share their stories about the atrocities that they faced at the time? Just take a listen.
Many victims and survivors of apartheid human rights violations are calling on the South African government to reopen the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, or TRC. They believe this will help them to access the 1 billion rand sitting in the President's Fund, designated by the TRC to to help victims of apartheid rebuild their shattered lives.
Government abusetse TRC o itswetse sentsene go le eli sentsene gona le dikgobalo tse dintsi tse di tsagetseng
sifuna ulungiswa ngoba sizikolokolo sifuna ukhenengwa inhliziyo nomzimba yethu nengqondo zethu.
Commission ya nnete le poelano challenge number 1 phephetso ya teng e ile ya eba le nako e nyane ho etsa mosebetsi wa yona.
South Africans are slowly healing from the wounds inflicted during the violent era of apartheid rule. Political violence was widespread in South Africa leading up to the 1994 elections. But in Thokoza and the adjoining townships of Katlehong and Vosloorus, the situation had reached civil war proportions. It was characterized by conflicts between township and hostel residents and train and taxi violence, which resulted in an unprecedented number of deaths and injuries.
Ngo-92 ndashonelwa ngumntwana apha eNatala Street emfuneni Natala Street ke-28 kaFebruwari edutyulwa ngamabhulu ayenxibe impahla ezibhanyabhanya ndazi uba kuthiwa yintoni na. Ndithe ke ngokudutyulwa kwakhe lo mntwana ndawo kwakusekuseni ngabo-10 bona nangu kukhalisa ibhamu zawutsho ke ngoku lapho kube kudutyulelwa khona abantwana kudutyulwa khona awujonga lo mntwana xa ndimjonga lo mntwana ndibene nala mabhula neempahla zibhanyabhanya lamapolisa ndathi ndifuna umntwana.
Miss Gladys is a Katlehong resident in the Sikosana section. She lost her child during the political violence in the East Rand. Upon hearing about the shooting of young people, she went to the local hospital to find out more.
Ndakhawuleza ndawutsho le apho kubhaliswa khona. Tena bendifika apho kubhaliswa khona ndafike ndabuza phaa efestileni uba akho mntwana ufikileyo napha udutyuleyo kwathiwa ukhona. Kubani igama balitsho igama lakhe ngumabhuti.
Later, the doctors told her what caused his son's death.
Bathi babethile ngezibhambi ezingalweni uphukene engalo bemtyisela ngezinja apha ematapileni lamabhulu. Izinjana ndizibona phaa eveni ukuthi zazi zayizizonyana. Into nabafuna bafuna unditshayisisa ngalanto kanti ufuna uqwalasela kanti bamlashe phaa ngasemva nezinja. Ezitha zamtya amatapile ke ngoku. Kwazi ubonakala ibhrukwe inqabile uba iqhubuke lapha ematapileni. Imuphule nengalo ke ngoku ndubule esibendini. Kwaba ke ngoku hamba ngolo hlobo umntwana wami. Ndabandingena ke ngoku lo hlobo ku-TRC.
One of the victims, Rifilwe from Davidton, was shot by members of the defense force at school.
Ke di-pain tsa 1985 tsa di-riot tsa mo Davidton ke tswa sekolong Masole. That time na go bitsiwa ke apartheid ba le ba re kry-a ko Masole le maphodisa ba re kry-a ko Katlego secondary ke kena form 1 and ne ben maibitsa ke grade 8 ba re thunya.
Rifilwe says during the riots she was fleeing with other school children when she got injured.
Ne le sekolong and then rena re go di-classeng ke re wa bona le ko sekolong batho ba tswa ba tshaba and then wa tshaba and then Masole a thunya fela kere so ya kopana le rena mo re kopanang teng ke ka mokgwa o dirileng diankere ya teng ge ke tloa.
She now lives with pellet bullets in her body.
Kare ke ntho ke phelang ka yona mo mmeleng anke le gore ha iyo mo mmeleng meno mo mmeleng kaofela maoto matsogo nako nngwe tsoga rurugile maoto nako nngwe tsoga rurugile wa e bona dilo tseo ena setso ya sepetlele ba tla botsa gore ha ba bone next ena ba bontsha x-ray ke gona ba makala ena x-ray ya teng ha e tswe ko sepetlele kere tshwantse ye ko private ko patela bokae.
Ms. Siawela is a member of the Kulumani support group based in Thokoza. Here, the victims and survivors of apartheid meet regularly for group healing.
Go 99. That dutyulelwa abantwana bam ababini. Intombi yaye yam ingumkhwenyana wayo ababulawa kunye kanye ngelanga elinye. Babakhupha endlini bababulala.
She lost 2 of her children just 5 years into the democratic dispensation. She says their crime was to change political affiliation.
Mna ndandisemsebenzini phuma emsebenzini Xa ndifika nje wabona bebehlala eMandela, ndabona kufika omnye umfazi ethi ndiyafuneka eMandela. Mna yintoni? Akachaza athi hayi nxiba mama yombatha siyahambe. Ndithi mna abantwana bam kutheni? Wathi mandombathe. Xa siya nyani ndafika indoda ilele ngapha, umntana elele ngapha, lo mncinci encanci ibele phaa.
Although her loss was many years ago, the pain is still fresh.
Yho, indifilisa kabuhlungu gqithi. Kangangoba ndithi xa unawuphinda kuliwe ngoku ndingagoduka ndimke eGoli, kodwa andinandlu, ndiphelele kulo mkhukhu. Andinanto, ndiphelele kulo mkhukhu.
Well, quite an interesting insert there that really speaks to the heart of today's celebration, the celebration around freedom, but also many stories that have not been told as yet. Actually, remembering a conversation that I had with the Minister of Defense at Mamwini Matikizela Mandela's memorial service, where she spoke about this issue around telling our stories, telling our experiences as a black nation, and quite specifically those who were impacted during the struggle against apartheid. And beautiful insert there by Tumiso Mashaba, as well as Dennis Setlane, who is from Lihlo La Sichaba, who did some of those interviews. But here's something quite important as well, is remember the 1950s Group Areas Act, and I saw that earlier on in Morning Live, they were running an insert of a documentary that looks at the Group Areas Act of 1950s rather, and how it had an impact on the community of District 9 in Cape Town. And it's a discussion that I started off with the Minister of Arts and Culture, who's running today's program here, and this is what he had to say. Just take a listen.
Well, those are the constant reminders whenever we talk about them and whenever we look back of how the oppressive racist regime used particular instruments to ensure that they dehumanize the African majority. So it's part and parcel of what the capturing of the beachhead in 1994 was about. Was about the majority taking charge of the political power in this country. And we've seen that after 2 decades, we've got to accelerate moving to the second phase of the struggle, as it were. And you would know that, as the theme captures it, that the year of Nelson Mandela towards a full realization of freedom through radical socio-economic transformation. What that means in simple terms is that we have reached that point in our history, which we knew about even during the struggle for liberation, that political power alone can never be enough, can never change the situation and the status quo. So that is why radical socio-economic, because here we are now talking about ownership, we are talking about the patterns, we are talking about changing the system. And if you are going to do that, it means a thorough going process is being embarked upon, and that will cause some fissures as we move forward. But one of the source for the economic development in this country is land, of course. The other would be education and relevant skills for the economy in the country.
Actually, before we chat about that second phase of the transition, when it came to the first phase of the transition, and this is attaining, of course, a political freedom, where each and every South African who was of the age, who could vote at the time, got the ability to vote. But the days leading up to that event, that was quite strenuous.
It was the resemblance of what the machinations of apartheid have been about. Because you would remember they planted in the minds of the people that there was something called black-on-black violence. Basically having the machinations of apartheid, using our own people through various means, Stratcom is one of them, to derail their own freedom and make them to believe that by derailing their own freedom is for the good of the majority, which is a farce, basically. But just 12 months before that, the assassination of Comrade Crisani, which signified the deep-seated hatred among some people of what was coming, and that is freedom for everybody. That is doing away with dehumanizing the majority of the people. So it was strenuous, and a lot of lives were lost. In fact, even just after our freedom, you still experience that kind of violence. But all of them scientifically have been proven that it has been the hand of the apartheid government which perpetuated this self-hate amongst African people.
And for instance, when you look at the Avia Beer at the time, the bombings that were carried out, and even the year before that, during the CODESA talks as well, them storming the World Trade Center.
Well, you know, change is pain to some people, and they feared change so much so that they thought that they were going to do something to derail it. The storming of World Trade Center quite clearly was an antithesis of what the country was moving towards. The country was moving towards two warring factions coming together and talking about their own country, from different perspectives, of course. But there were those who were saying that if you have one person, one vote in South Africa, you are going to obliterate the white society, which was a scarecrow. It's something which happened in the past with the Rooi Gevaar, with the liberation movement, Africans Gevaar and so on. But all those didn't succeed. We are where we are today, where we're saying that 1994 was the building blocks for a better life for all in South Africa, which saw massive change of mindset from a government point of view, a government understanding that it has a task of meeting the basic needs of the people. It has a task of changing materially the lives of people. Nobody can argue against that today, that lives of our people have qualitatively changed over the past 2 decades. Without anything, one of the most important achievements of our freedom is the fact that people have their voice. The majority have their voice, have their dignity. The stripping of the dignity of the majority of people of South Africa was one of the most heinous crimes against our people.
I wonder then, Minister, why is it that, 24 years on since we've had that incident, since we've now attained our democracy, that we're still having these discussions around how people are being stripped of their dignity? And I'm going to put you to, I'm going to point you to one case in point right now, where the MEC for Education in Gauteng, Panyaza Lesufi, was met by 2 white men who had a doll, a human-sized doll hanging from a tree with his face on, and saying that Panyaza Lesufi is quote-unquote raping Afrikaans.
Well, such indignity, we experience it. And the people who are at the receiving end will continue to receive that. The people who are at the receiving end are those who are faced with these dangers on an ongoing basis. Remember that when South Africa voted for freedom, those who advocated apartheid did not perish. What we are experiencing in South Africa today is racism without racists having to show their face. And everybody saying, no, we love New South Africa, we love Mandela, all of us and so on, but in action, doing something opposite. Our task is to continue focusing the nation in building a socially coherent society, because those are the spoilers. Our agenda cannot be dictated to by themselves. We have to deal with them as we move forward, because They want a situation, as the AWB and others were doing in the past, they want a situation where there will be an issue, that our real issues of economic freedom, our real issues of ensuring better life for our people get distracted in the process. We are not going to be distracted. We'll deal with them as we go. Those who are racist in our country, we have said that, and we have encouraged our people to be intolerant of such. And through government's own regulation processes, we will ensure that the Momberg's example is part and parcel of what is happening in our country.
Just in closing, Minister, and speaking about the issue of Afrikaans, we're actually in a province where you have the University of the Free State. The Constitutional Court recently handed down judgment in December where it spoke about the policy of the University of the Free State, that there's absolutely nothing wrong with the university deciding to use English as the main language of instructions instead of having two parallel structures where you have Afrikaans and English. And this was something that was fought by AfriForum, saying that no, that Afrikaans must remain in the university as another language of instruction.
Well, if you want to define who you are and if you want to know how people feel about themselves, touch the language. What I can say there is that we have our courts. Our courts are these, the arbiters and the interpreters of our own constitution and the laws of the land. And if it comes to an end to the Constitutional Court, that's it. But the point we want to make is that the task of this government is to further develop other official languages, including some languages which are not necessarily official. But the situation, what you have just said, underlined the point that the development of Afrikaans and English over a period of time has seen these being dominant in our society. Which then says to us, we need to do more in ensuring that we deepen the development of other languages. We are doing that in other instances. We have, for instance, a research arm for these other languages. And we are saying that that should, extend to other languages so that they also get the respect, because as long as we don't emphasize on that, people will think that South Africa only have English and Afrikaans, which is not true.
We have, 9 other languages?
Yeah. 9 other languages, and over and above that, the Constitution recognizes other spoken languages in South Africa, which are not necessarily official languages.
Well, very important there what the Minister said about developing other languages as well. And this is something that has been fought by various pressure groups, including the likes of SASCO, a student organization that's saying that other languages must also be introduced as a medium of instruction, and it must not only be English and Afrikaans. It will only be for the benefit of all South Africans that you have the various other indigenous languages being adopted as mediums of instructions, whether it is at a school level or even at the university. So it's very important to ensure that those languages are indeed developed. And quite important and interesting hearing what the minister had to say there about racism, saying that what the country is experiencing now is racism without racist, seeing the number of incidents and racist attacks that we've seen on social media as it stands at the moment. Well, we're still here at the stadium where the Freedom Day celebrations will be kicking off around about 11 o'clock. That's when the official program will start. We'll have the 21 gun salute and the guard of honor, as the president will be standing on the podium right behind me. As you can see that the grandstand at the moment as well. The grandstand filling up as people are making their way here to the stadium, a 20,000 seater stadium. At the moment, mostly students, children, school children who are here. I see that the ANC Women's League is also here. Part of their members are also part of today's celebration. Just spotted the mayor of the city of Mangaung. She's also arrived. She's also expected to give some sort of address just before the president takes to the podium and deliver the keynote address. You know, as I have been saying throughout, that it will be quite interesting to hear what the president has to say about Freedom Day, about those days leading up to Freedom Day, and what the minister was saying as well, the issues around the violence and the pushback that was there during that time. The aviabias, if you remember, who stormed the World Trade Center at the time when there were negotiations at Codesa, also bombings that took place. Actually, the AWVA leader, Eugene Terblanche, testifying at the TRC and admitting that he was behind the attacks that were taking place just days before the election day on the 27th of April 1994, where around 21 people were killed, and of course a number of people were convicted for those murders that took place at the time. I see that the mayor is still busy with an interview, but as soon as she's finished, we'll try and speak to her about today's event and the importance as well about today's event. But quite importantly would be there some of the issues that were raised in that insert earlier on that has been put together by Ukhatebe here in the Free State. Members of these communities here in the Free State raising issues around Freedom Day, saying that while we celebrate Freedom Day, they can't really say that freedom has been attained to its full potential, considering that they still have issues around the supply of water, and of course, as we've seen on the grandstands as well, the issue around employment and ensuring that people do find job opportunities. But as I said earlier on, that the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, has made a promise at the youth symposium, where he said that it is possible to create 500,000 jobs each year, and whether indeed that will be attained will be something that we need to watch. Quite closely. For now, it's back to you guys in studio, and as I said, as soon as the mayor is available to speak to us, we'll speak to the mayor. Oh, I understand that we're going to a commercial break. Let's go to that commercial break, and we'll continue with our coverage of Freedom Day.
This distinguished CEO would say the best way to enjoy a brandy is whilst wearing diamond-encrusted lamb's wool socks, accompanied by
the smell of fresh money.
Woo! Really? Sock diamonds? Well, we'd say a brandy enjoyed with last night's pizza works just as well. Tops at Spa. Good brandy, good advice, no blingy socks.
Shervin Bryceby's SABC News, New York.
Paul Barber, SABC News, London.
Ntebo Mokobo, SABC Ufa go tswa mo Russia.
Neha Punia, SABC News, Saharanpur in Uttar Pradesh in India.
Other than that, I've enjoyed every single moment of it.
Takwana Ngatani, SABC News, Soweto, Johannesburg.
Well, 7 people died when a bakkie was hit by a train in the early hours of this morning. President Cyril Ramaphosa will address the 2018 Freedom Day celebrations at the Dr. Molamela Stadium in Bloemfontein later this morning. The embattled Northwest Province has denied knowledge of a cabinet decision to place the collapsed provincial health department under administration.
And later in sport, the International Athletics Federation has taken to Twitter to defend its new rule regarding athletes with hypoandrogenism, saying it's neither racist or targeting one or two athletes.
Very good morning to you and welcome to Newsroom. A very happy Freedom Day to all. I'm Shanti Yankee. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Coming up this hour, we give you the latest on the Freedom Day celebrations down there in Bloemfontein. Aljan Tampe is giving us a coverage as we wait to the build-up as President Cyril Ramaphosa is set to address the crowds later this morning. We've also been asking you, what are your sentiments around Freedom Day, as well as how far we have come since 1994. That's more coming up in just a bit. Valen Kirtley is standing by with your sports. A very happy Friday to you, Valen, and a very happy Freedom Day.
Thank you, Shante. Happy Friday to you and happy Freedom Day to you too. And our viewers, I'll be bringing you the latest from the world of sport at 1/4 every hour here on Newsroom. First, though, it's back to Shante for your top story.
In your lead story, at least 7 people have been killed in a collision between a train and a bakkie early this morning at the Butskop level crossing in Blackheath outside Cape Town. We will be giving you more details around this accident as and when they come in. Well, the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation says the continued eruption of violent protests in various provinces in South Africa could be a sign of increased desperation amongst citizens who feel their grievances continue to fall on deaf ears. The centre has called on government to act with a sense of urgency in securing democracy in the country. The centre has also reiterated the call made by the latest struggle stalwart Winnie Madikizela Mandela for the country's leadership to undergo introspection to ensure the kinds of violence seen in Tshwane during the last local government elections do not occur again. Well, to talk more about this, we are joined in studio by SABC from the Centre for the Study of Violence and Reconciliation. Very good morning to you, sir. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. You know, essentially, are protests a threat to South Africa's freedom?
Morning, Chanti, and happy Freedom Day to you too. Certainly, yes. As you might have observed in the past weeks, there's been sporadic protests that are not organized, that's the first thing, but also they're spreading across the country. And as a result, that might be a challenge to our democratic dispensation. But we must also locate this within the context of the hope that people, you know, when they voted in 1994, to say 24 years on, there seems to be a betrayal. And therefore, this results in desperation by the communities, you know. So yes, certainly this should be a concern for a democratic dispensation.
Do you think that, you know, in light of the protests that we've seen specifically now over the past couple of weeks, it poses a threat not only to what South Africa has gained in the past, but South Africa's freedom essentially going forward?
Certainly, yes. As you recall, is that in many instances, communities, before they even start to protest, they, for instance, embark on several, you know, initiatives, such as, you know, speaking to your local councillors or your mayors, you know, your premiers. But those in leadership seem not to, you know, ensure that those grievances that communities have are taken into account and to consider in terms of addressing them. So that is one of the challenges. But secondly, is that this desperation also, like I said, is that in many instances you'd find that communities, whenever they engage in protest, people lose their identity. You know, I mean, let's take a typical example, a very typical example about what has happened in Moses Mabhida Stadium. You know, you'd find that some of the protesters there are people that ordinarily would never are not violent in their nature, but because they are in a group, you know, that's what we call crowd within the crowds. So once you are part of the crowds, then you lose your identity, and people may start, you know, doing what the group does. And as such, because they're unstructured, unorganized, and in many instances, they lead to violent protest.
Let's just have a look at the notion that, you know, many community members, if we have a look at protests, seem that violence and protesting is the only way that they can be heard. In a case, an example, we had also protests that were taking place down in the Eastern Cape.
Yes.
And, you know, speaking to some of the community members, they had actually told the reporter that we heard that Cyril Ramaphosa is going to address the Northwest protesters. With that being said, we're also going to be shutting down the town, and we also want the president to come to our town and hear our concerns here in the Eastern Cape.
You see, this is another problem. I think we can't see our president going through the country whenever there's a violent protest. I think the president has appointed ministers, you know, he has appointed MECs through the premiers. And therefore, those are people that are supposed to be taking responsibility and accountability and ensuring that whatever grievances that communities have, they are attended to. But once we find the president, going to Northwest, then it means he must also go to Soweto, and that might create a very bad precedent. So I'm saying, you know, those that are tasked to deal with crowd in terms of safety, the Minister of Police is supposed to be the one who's dealing with that. But also the other thing that I think we also need to speak about as a society is that how do we appoint or elect people at a local level? Because some of the protests, emerge from at a local level where, you know, people have got grievances such as, you know, water supply, electricity, and so forth and so on. So I think we also need to look deeply in terms of how do we elect or appoint, you know, whether be it a street committee leader or a ward councillor, and how do we ensure that these structures are democratic? Because in many instances, you'd find that some of the people that get to be elected are people that are affiliated to a political party, and in many instances, political parties, they start to become partisan instead of addressing the, you know, community concern. So those are some of the things that we must also look into.
Definitely. Speaking of democracy, the Centre for Study of Violence and Reconciliation said that we live somewhat now in a fragile democracy. Can you allude more on that? So it's fragile in the sense that there was hope in 1994. There was hope that this democracy would yield positive results in terms of, firstly, ensuring that we deal with triple challenges of unemployment, inequality, and poverty. But as we'll see, that has increased. This South Africa, I think sometimes last year has released its unemployment results. I think we're sitting, for those that have been collated, around 27%. And a majority of people that are affected by that are young people. And our country is getting younger and younger. And therefore, that is a big threat for our democracy. I then pose the same question to the political analyst that we had on earlier on the show. And in him saying also he feels that one of the biggest threats to our democracy currently is poverty. And of course, associated with that is, of course, unemployment. What then can be done to strengthen the democracy? Because at the moment we do know that poverty and unemployment and all these other issues are definitely going to be issues that are going to take some time for us to get through and work through. Yeah, that what you have just raised, Chanti, is can be addressed within the medium to long term. But the non-negotiables, that I would call non-negotiables. So, for instance, if the community does not have water supply, the local council has got the responsibility to communicate that information to his or her, you know, people at the local level. When there's no electricity, it can't be people go on ends without electricity, and nobody takes responsibility and they say, colleagues, we've got these challenges and we're trying to engage as communities to sort out that problem. So those are some of these are the non-negotiables that people at the local level, those that are tasked to lead the people at the community level, are supposed to take responsibility and accountability in terms of what is it that they are there for. Definitely. Lastly, yes. Mr. Klinwa, what is your message to South Africans this Freedom Day? I think what we want to say is that South Africa has achieved much. We have got democratic institutions.
So if we've got grievances, we've got those issues that we must be able to utilize. That's the first thing. But also that the leadership that we have, our leadership, must start taking accountability and responsibility in terms of dealing with. In fact, they should look at themselves in the mirror and say, what is it, where have we gone wrong, and what is it that we can do to improve the lives of our people.
Definitely. Thank you very much for your time this morning. That was SABC from the Center for a Study of Violence and Reconciliation, talking to us about the importance of protecting South Africa's democracy and the various protests that have been happening in and around the country. In some breaking news that came through this morning, at least 7 people have been killed in a collision between a train and a bakkie early this morning at the Buildup level crossing in Blackheath, just outside of Cape Town. SABC's Nomawethu Solwandle is at the scene. A very good morning to Nomawethu. What have you found out so far about today's accident?
Well, a very good morning to you, Shante. I must say that it is certainly a somber mood here at the Buildup level crossing in Blackheath, just outside of Gales River. Like you said, 7 people have been killed when a bakkie collided with a train here. Now, Shante, you'll remember that this is the exact same level crossing where 10 school children were killed when a small vehicle collided with a train in 2012. People here have expressed shock. They say that they've been talking to local authorities to do something about this level crossing, and yet again 7 people killed at about 6 o'clock this morning. I'm just going to speak to Frederico Hendrik, who is a community member here. Sir, just how is the community feeling today?
Well, our community is very sad at this point in time, and we feel that they should have. It's long overdue that there must be a flyover or a subway underneath the train railway, and we as the community feel that the government should do something ASAP.
Now, in between there have been small accidents, yes, but this is the second major one since 2010. Yeah. What have you engaged with the local authorities thus far, besides having this flyover? How often do you have these engagements with them?
We do liaise with the councillors and the authorities, and we speak to them, and we ask them that they must do something about this, because there's always problems here. This boom has been problematic for the last 2 weeks, and that's why the taxi driver came and he lifted up the boom and he went through, and the bakkie tried also to cross over, but he failed to do so. So we do liaise with the people, but they are not responding. So we need something now to be done, a subway or a flyover.
Now, Frederico, just paint a picture for me. We do see the railway track behind us. There's a boom there. If you're coming from this side, what happens? Can you see a train coming here? Should there be a signal? What happens? Paint a picture for us.
No, there's no. If you stand that side, you can't really see, because there's always trees. There's always things that's blocking the view, and there's no access control here. Here's a subway just up here at Croydon Estate. It's already a subway open for them there, and there's access control. Here's no access control. Nobody's sitting here. There's no security. There's no traffic officers that's standing here, that sits here and does the access control, especially when it's peak hours. We sit here. You must come here in the morning. You'll see cars parked up till the corner there every morning, and if the trains is delayed, then we always sit with the problem. So that's why people get frustrated, and they get and then they'll just do their own thing, especially the taxi drivers.
Frederico, if you can just talk to us more about that. Are people actually obeying road rules when it comes to these level crossings?
Not always. I must say I've witnessed how some people just cross over, and they've given people fines of 1,500 rand if you cross over with the cameras there, but that's not solving the problem. We need a solution to this problem, as a subway or a flyover. This road here is on the town plan. It's been many years, N7. It's just been put back all the time.
Now, Frederico, I haven't been able to find out the details about the specific accident because police are obviously still busy clearing the scene. What have you heard as a resident? What happened at 6 a.m. this morning?
I've heard that what happened is somebody or the taxi driver came, the boom was down and he came and lifted it up. I think it was waiting too long. So he lifted it up and he crossed over, but then the bakkie also tried to cross over and he got stuck on the train, railway line.
And do you know if any of the family members are here? Do you know who these people are?
No, there was people that came here that thought it was their family members that came here, but nobody came yet. So we can't really identify who the people are.
And just also lastly from you, Frederico, just what the community of Blackheath is going through at this point in time.
I'm serving currently on the Greater Blue Dance Ministers Fraternal on the board, and we as the church and the community and the business forums, we feel that this is enough, and the pain that's coming back to the families that's here, that stays behind. There's people that only had 2 children and only had 1 child. They lost their children on the accident in 2010, and we moved the memorial wall to the graveyard here, and we did the unveiling there. But we feel as a community this is enough. It's too much pain. It's too much to bear and to witness how people are picked up from the train line and because they died. Because somebody did something wrong. We had enough.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That there was Frederico Hendricks. He is a resident here at Blackheath, just painting a picture for us, Shante, about what happens at this Baskop level crossing. Like you know, the very same thing happened in 2010 and 10 school children were killed right here. And this morning at about 6 o'clock, 7 more people were killed right here. Now, there have been minor accidents in between, but this is the second major one. We've seen residents gathering here, very sad, you know, calling out to local authorities to do something about this. And of course, for drivers, taxi drivers as well, just to be aware of what is happening about them. But of course, they're calling for a flyover or a bridge here just to ensure that no more lives are cut short at this very spot. We'll keep an eye on what's happening here, but at this point we can confirm that people have gathered here and the scene has been cleared. If you can just see behind me, if my colleague can just pan for you there, police are starting to do their investigative work. We do know that Metro Rail has sent out a statement to say that they'll do their own investigation just to find out what has happened here. But of course, police doing their own investigation here. I just want to speak to some more people here, some residents. Ma'am, would you speak to us? Just how do you feel about what has happened here?
No, my dear, I'm sorry, I can't say anything. I just arrived here.
You just arrived?
Yes, my
dear. But how do you feel as a resident of Blackheath?
Oh, it's very bad, actually. It's really very bad. You mean it's a few years ago, the same thing happened here. With children, school children, and now it's people who go to work now at the moment. But to be honest, it's very sad.
And for you, what do you think should be done, ma'am?
I think they must be done more about it. They must check out the lights, make sure everything is fine. I don't know what to say anymore, really. But it's very disappointing and very sad.
Well, another resident there saying that they are very sad that every day they have to be concerned about people that are killed in the very, very same spot. Like I said, Shante, 2010, the same thing, and today 7 more lives claimed here. If Mark can just pan for you to what's happening on the scene there, you can see there very far back, the train is still standing there. The bakkie itself has been cleared. So we will keep an eye on the situation. But I can confirm that the bodies have also been removed because, of course, this happened at about 6 o'clock. So police have been on the scene for quite some time. But we will keep an eye on what's happening to you and we'll keep you abreast of what's happening here in Blackheath. For now, it's back to you in the studio, Shante.
So just before we cross back, of course, it has been confirmed that 7 people have died in that collision. Were those all the 7 people that were inside the vehicle, or were there other passengers inside that possibly survived.
What we know right now, Shante, is that the 7 people that died were actually in that bakkie. Metro Rail did issue a statement this morning to say that they're not aware of any passengers that were on the train that have also been injured. So we can confirm that at this stage, the 7 people that died were in that bakkie.
Thank you very much for that update. Now we're to Solwandle for SABC News as those horrific pictures are coming through this morning. Also, speaking to some of the residents there, some of the residents are saying that this is not the first time that it has happened. Back in 2010, just a horrific accident with the same magnitude also took place, also claiming the lives of children. Frustrated residents are also calling for a subway or a highway to be put over there and saying this is not the first time, as well as also drivers of the road are also not respecting that level crossing. We will be giving you more updates on that, as well as a possible statement from Metro Rail, as said by our reporter on the ground, Nomawethu Solwandle. Well, the 2018 main Freedom Day celebrations are being held in Bloemfontein today. The celebration will highlight former President Nelson Mandela and struggle stalwart Albertina Sisulu, who would both have turned 100 this year. Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa is expected to address the main event at the Dr. Molamela Stadium in Rocklands at noon today. SABC's Aljan Sempe has been joining us from Cape Town, just taking us through the build-up and the coverage of today's program taking place in Bloemfontein. We also await that address from the President. Very good morning to you once again, Aljan. It seems that celebrations are well underway this morning.
Well, we're standing by with the mayor of Mangaung, who is, of course, the host city that's hosting the Freedom Day celebration, Mayor Oli. Mayor Oli, just quickly, let's speak about today's celebrations, the excitement around celebrating Freedom Day here in your city, Mangaung.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. I'm Oli Mnamdeli, the executive mayor of Mangaung Metro, in this city of roses, city of cheetahs, city of Siwelele Samasele, Hela Yalusani. That is how we greet people. I am happy to be welcoming among everybody the President Cyril Ramaphosa and his cabinet and all the people that are in here. We are very excited to be hosting this day. We are going to listen to the President about this day of Freedom Day, when we are celebrating the life of Tate Nelson Mandela. We are also celebrating it through and honoring through the program, which is very important, the program of economic transformation.
Speaking about radical economic transformation, there have been a couple of issues that have been raised by some people, especially some, for instance, access to water, making sure that there's always enough water stream that goes in through the households. There's issues around jobs as well.
Yes, we can't. It's a water scarce country. We can't. Is affecting us as well. We can't deny that the drought is causing our water levels in our dam to be flown. But we always remember that water, it is one of the basic services to the people. We have instances when that our water pipes are bursting, and that disturbs the flow of water into the pipes, through the taps, into the houses. And that means we are to ensure that we give people water, we are leveraging the infrastructure, at the same time maintaining the infrastructure that is aging at the moment. I want to make an example about the area that is called Kaleputabi. In Kaleputabi, we are now leveraging the infrastructure. We are putting infrastructure to make sure that we provide water, electricity and sewage to 7,500 households. But whenever people are having the disturbance in the supply of water, it is our responsibility, and we always do it as the Metro, to notify people the water will be not flowing up to this time. We even show the size of the pipes so that they must understand. But I don't want to deny that we cannot be in a position to satisfy everybody at the same time. But water is a scarce commodity in this country. We as Mangaung Metro, we are working very hard to ensure that people get water. We are working with Blue Water. Yesterday, I was tabling the draft budget. And in that draft budget, I said that there is 450 million put aside only for water and sanitation. And there are, again, money that were put aside only for maintenance. We are not going to deny it, that the infrastructure that we have, it was meant for a few number of people. It was meant for only certain areas in the city, in town, in the north suburbs. But you see that our areas are flowing. It is only 2 weeks back, when I was with the Minister Ned, I asked him a question, Minister, I see, you also see that the development, the growth of our cities, it leaves the budget behind. He advised me to say, Executive Mayor, with the little budget and the equitable share that we have, while people are unable to pay services because they are not working, because they are poor, you must make sure that you go all out and other funding resources to make sure that we do what we as government are supposed to be doing people. We are not doing them favor when we supply water to them and other services.
We will hold you to task, Mayor, if you do fail to provide the people with water. Absolutely. We will come and visit you again. Absolutely. And see when.
You are welcome.
Okay then. Well, there you have it from Mayor Olio, who is the mayor of the city of Mangaung. And as today we celebrate Freedom Day, we also celebrate the centenary of Nelson Mandela, as well as Albertina Sisulu, who's also being celebrated this year, who would have turned 100 years today. And here's, rather 100 years this year. And here's an insert that looks into the life of Albertina Sisulu and her contribution towards the liberation struggle and the freedom that we enjoy today.
The day I got married was the day I was emancipated as a woman. There was no difference between him and me, because here in the house we used to do the same work. We were equals from the beginning.
A bond that spanned more than 62 years, one of hope and endurance.
We had so much in common. We had developed not only love, friendship, but developed friendship that it was going to be very difficult just to think of going to anybody.
It was her husband, Walter, who drew her into the struggle. One of the highlights of her contribution, the role she played in the 1956 march to the Union buildings. Sisulu, along with 20,000 other women, protested against apartheid pass laws and bond to education. Her stance saw her set up home-based schooling.
I watched Albertina, grow in stature as she looked after the family and became a role model to me now as a woman.
In 1964, her husband was jailed for life for sabotage. This, together with Nelson Mandela and other ANC leaders in the Rivonia trial. Sisulu single-handedly raised their children. During this time, she endured political hardships. She was detained without trial, tortured several times, and finally banned from public gatherings. In total, she was banned for 18 years.
You must remember me going in and out jail up to the last case of treason trial, being the only woman amongst 15 men. Not fighting for my own interests, for my own family, but for the oppressed people of South Africa as a whole.
Her banning order was only lifted in 1983. Soon after, Sisulu became president of the newly launched United Democratic Front. The organization was formed to bolster the anti-apartheid struggle in the absence of the outlawed ANC and other political organizations. In 1989, the couple's connection was rekindled after her husband's release from Robben Island.
Well, earlier on I was joined by the Minister Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula, speaking about the tenacity as well as the courage of Mam Sisulu. And just take a listen about what she has to say and the inspiration that they, as women leaders, draw from the likes of Ma Sisulu as well as the likes of Mam Winnie Madikizela Mandela.
Firstly, I think that on days like this, we should always remember what our stalwarts, what our veterans, what our icons went through for us to get to where we are. And therefore, what that means is that we should never ever take this freedom for granted. We should always remember that people went through a lot of pain. People died. Blood was spilled in order for us to be here today. So when we talk about Ma Sisulu, we must always remember that Ma Sisulu was a woman of high caliber, a resilient woman, a leader of the South African people. When I talk about her, I never like to say Ma Sisulu was just a woman's leader. Ma Sisulu was a leader of the South African people. It is for that reason that in 1983, when the United Democratic Front was formed in Cape Town, that Ma Sisulu was elected as one of the presidents of the UDF. It is because of the caliber of a person she was. Very strong, by the way, very assertive, very firm, but in her own way, she was equally a very humble servant of our people.
And if you look at 1956, the Women's March, it seems that she was equal to the task at hand.
Of course, one of the things which people need to understand about Ma Sisulu, she was not just a public figure, you know. Ma Sisulu was a serious underground worker of the African National Congress. No wonder the Boers saw it fit that they should isolate her, put her under banishment in her house for so many years. It is because Ma Sisulu knew what it means to mobilize South African people. Ma Sisulu knew what it means to pass on messages to operatives of the African National Congress in South Africa here without leaving her house.
I actually remember on the day after she had passed on and the days leading up to the funeral, and for our viewers who wouldn't know, that the house is quite close to the Hector Peterson Museum in Soweto, and just listening to the anecdotes of people telling their stories about this woman who, like Umam Winnie, has remained amongst her people.
Of course, like Mama Winnie, these were two different women, by the way, very different. The one was extremely charismatic, has this appeal to our people, but Ma Sisulu had this appeal, but in her own humble way. She was not an extrovert, right? So at times you would look at her and you would never anticipate what she's going to say to you. You would never anticipate what Ma Sisulu stands for until you interact with her and really appreciate who she is. Then you would appreciate who she is and what she stands for.
Minister, let's just quickly speak about another aspect of freedom, on celebrating Freedom Day and ushering in democracy, is of course this transition, a transition that leads from an apartheid regime into a democratically state-led regime where you have the government being led by the ANC. But quite importantly, the department that you had at this moment, at a political level, of course, it had to be incorporated with the likes of the MKM, the Mkhonto weSizwe, those who were part of the struggle, and they had to be incorporated with a national defense force at the time that was perpetuating an idea that has been sold by the government of the time, the government being led by the apartheid regime.
Oh yes. Remember when the integration process started, it was an integration of both the statutory and the non-statutory forces. And when we talk about non-statutory, you're talking about MK, APLA, Azanla. And then when you talk about statutory forces, you talk about the South African Defence Force. And of course, you also had the TPVC states. Now, it was a very difficult process, very difficult. But all our people knew that it had to be done in order for us to have a South African National Defence Force. Today we have a South African National Defence Force who at the helm is led by those who came from the non-statutory forces. Of course, at the middle layer leadership of the Defence Force, you do have a combination of both those from the non-statutory and those from the statutory Defence Force. What for me is important is that there should be mutual respect. What for me is important is that they should work together, understanding that there is one sole reason for the Defence Force to exist, and that is the defense of the sovereignty of the Republic of South Africa, its territorial integrity as well. So for me, there has to be a close working together relationship. They have to commit themselves to the Constitution of the Republic of South Africa and the flag of the Republic of South Africa. So when you look at the SANDF, yes, sometimes you hear this story and that story of issues, things which happen in our society. But actually, what you have is a South African National Defence Force which understands its mandate.
Just quickly in closing, Minister, we've seen the SANDF now also playing a pivotal role in the health facilities in the Northwest. Just tell us more about that.
In fact, that's what they should be doing, because most of the time we are not deploying the South African National Defence Force on the borderline. We do have those who are on the borderline. We equally have those who are deployed, for instance, in the Democratic Republic of Congo. You also have a few who are deployed as military advisors and experts or even trainers in other countries. Most of the time, really, in the country here, they are there, but there is no deployment of our troops. So for me, I felt it was a good opportunity when the Northwest went on fire, and I said, of course, let the Defence Force move in. Let them understand that, in fact, one of the reasons why they exist is to come in at times when there is a disaster in the country. And yes, of course, we have doctors, we have psychologists, we have nurses, we have a whole range of medical personnel who have shown extreme dedication and commitment in the work that they do. And of course, at this point in time, we salute them for the work they have done in the Northwest. And by the way, just to say that we would not want a repetition of what is happening in the Northwest. People have a right to express themselves when there are things they would like dissatisfaction. People have a right to express themselves when they are unhappy. But the manner in which they have done it in the Northwest, by blocking medical personnel from having access to hospitals and clinics, it is incorrect, it is unjustifiable, and therefore it requires of the security forces to stop it with immediate effect, and I believe that they will do so.
Minister, just quickly in one sentence, how long will they be there?
For as long as the strike is on, for as long as you have people who are blocking nurses and doctors from accessing medical facilities, for as long as you have women who are on labor, who are due to give birth. On the day we went in there was one hospital which had 70 women at the maternity ward who were due to deliver their babies at any given time. And then you had people at the gate who are your so-called workers, were stopping, hooligans of course as well, were stopping medical personnel from gaining access to the hospital. But the directive we issued was that let the Defence Force move in, and that it has to be understood that there is no hooligan who will stop the South African National Defence Force from going into the hospitals and those clinics and do their work, if only to save the lives of South Africans, because the Defence Force is not going to negotiate with them. The South African National Defence Force will do what is right.
Well, tough words there from the Minister of Defence Force and Military Veterans, Nosiviwe Mapisa Ngakula. But here's a breaking news story that we continue to cover here on SABC News, that train accident between a car as well as the train in Blackheath, that train level crossing, Nomawethu Solanhle is standing by with further updates with regards to what has happened and whether the injuries, the number of injuries have increased.
Well, thank you very much, Aldrin. I can confirm that it's certainly a very somber mood here in Blackheath. Like you rightfully said, in 2010, at the very spot here in Blackheath, we saw 10 school children killed, and today 7 more killed at the very same spot. I think a couple of minutes ago I just saw the community gather here and they started to pray, saying that this can't go on any longer. Something needs to be done because clearly there's a problem here. They're speaking about a flyover that can be done because sometimes when people or drivers drive past here, they can't see when a train is coming from my right here. So something needs to be done. We spoke to other residents earlier on and they were saying that something really needs to be done. But we've been struggling to find information as in exactly what has happened. And now I'm joined by someone from Metro Rail just to tell us what their understanding is. Ma'am, just tell us, what is your understanding of what happened here at 6 o'clock this morning?
The information that we got from the train driver was that the bakkie that was having 7 occupants passed through the red signal because there was another taxi that also did the same. Apparently the signals were on amber, so they followed suit thinking that they also would be as lucky as the combi that went through. Unfortunately, they missed it. All of them were killed instantly on the crossing. And actually, I just would like to say, as Metro Rail management, would like to pass our condolences to the family, to the friends of the deceased, because it's a really sad incident.
Now, Zino, the exact same thing happened here in 2010 when 10 school children were killed. What's the issue here?
The issue at all level crossings, this is one of the busiest level crossings in the northern suburbs, on the northern line. So it is quite busy, but during public holidays and holidays, people tend to assume that things are just going to be quieter, but the trains are on their way. It's their right of way to be on the rail tracks. So if you do not heed the rules of the rail, unfortunately you will miss, or you will unfortunately not make it, because it was one of those incidents. And what we heard from the community was that the deceased were under 30s, were in their early 30s. 7 of them, they were apparently on their way to work. So it's quite hectic. And it's very, very sad.
And just have we been able to make contact with family at this stage? I understand that the 7 that died were just in the bakkie. There were no injuries or fatalities with people or passengers that were on the train. Can you confirm this for us?
Yeah, what we got from our train crew was that there were no injuries or fatalities from our side, from our commuters, because everything was more, the impact was more on the bakkie. And I just would like to also say that the booms were fully functional according to our technicians, and the CCTV camera that is installed here is also functional. And I must also say that we every week as Metro Rail conduct rail safety awareness campaigns as part of ensuring that we make sure to alert the people of the dangers that are associated with booms and with level crossings.
Now, Zino, we do understand that there are lines that are going to be affected by this. Can you confirm those lines, and for how long?
All the lines in the northern suburbs are going to be affected for 60 plus minutes. It's going to be for more than an hour, but we cannot really now confirm and say in 3 hours time, because everything now has been cleared. As you can see, everything has been cleared now, but we hope that by this afternoon things will be better.
Well, thank you very much for your time. That there was Zino Mihi. She is from Metro Rail, just getting us up to speed about what has happened here. And she says that the booms were fully functional, according to Metro Rail technicians. What had happened was that a taxi had passed earlier, the robots were amber, and this bakkie took a chance to try and get over as well. And at that time, a train was coming and 7 people were killed. I'm just going to speak to someone else, a resident here who was also here in 2010. Ma'am, if you can just come a little bit closer and just stand here so we can have you in shot. Ma'am, I saw you as part of the residents that were praying there earlier. This is the exact same spot where you gathered to pray in 2010. How are you feeling this morning?
Good morning. I'm April from the community of Denemere, and I heard this accident on the radio, on the TV, so I switched it on TV, so I saw this problem. So I came here now, and I saw exactly the same thing that happened in 2010. I think it's very pathetic that things is not in a proper manner, that's operating in a proper manner. Normally we also drove across this line. Sometimes I saw these things also not working, and it's not nice that you must stand here and wait for this booms to get up and down. And it can be very dangerous. So normally we took the other road. I mean, from the community side, we can do something like doing volunteering, standing there when things is not operating properly. Then we can, from the men's side, I mean, from my point of view, I can also do this. But for the men, they can volunteer and do and control this thing also when it's not working. I mean, for traveling by train, and a lost family like this, it's not a nice thing. And I feel very emotional. And it could have been my child also 2010. But unfortunately, I'm so blessed and my children are safe on the other side. I came here and there was so much mourners and I was part of it. So I believe that everyone must come and put something here, put something effort in and help the people on this line, because it cannot go on like this.
Now, as you heard there, ma'am, when I spoke to Zino Mihi from Metro Rail, you know, it's almost as if it's the drivers that need to be more aware of the situation. She spoke about the boom gates that were fully functional from what they technicians assessed a little bit earlier. What's your view on this, that drivers need to be more alert at railway crossings?
I think most of the drivers, they're not so alert, because from the taxi drivers, they're rushing. I mean, they don't transport animals. It's people. It's people. Sometimes I travel by taxi also, and I know the drivers, they are rushing. It's peak hour, it's this and that. But it's not supposed to be like that. They must be alert to cross this line, you see? And there's a stop there. There's a stop sign. They must stop, move, look, move. On that side, stop, look, move. They must. It must be free to move. They mustn't go and rush. Sometimes they go in between these bars. It's not right. They're not functioning properly, as their mindset is not right with all these kind of things they're doing.
Now, ma'am, you also mentioned how the community needs to get involved, you know, take turns to come and stand here and ensure that things are okay. But what's a long-term solution for this railway crossing?
The long term, I don't know if they can do like a foot bridge over. I don't know if they can do, because if you look at the wires on top, is it high enough to do this thing? I don't know. But from my point of view, I would love them to make something like that, to be easy. Because in Sarepta, it's the same bridge, so why can't they do something like that here in Blackheath?
Thank you very much for your time. That there was one of the residents here in Blackheath saying that in August 2010, she was here with the community when 10 school kids were killed at this very same level crossing. And today they gather here again as 7 more people were killed. And of course, in between, there are those minor accidents. But what residents are saying here in Blackheath, that more needs to be done by local authorities. We did speak to someone from Metro Rail, Zino Mihi. She has confirmed that from their side, their technicians also assessed what happened here at about 6 o'clock this this morning, and everything from their side was fine. Those boom gates were fully functional. What had happened was that a taxi had moved the boom gate because they were trying to get through, and the robot was amber. There was a bakkie that was then coming behind this taxi, and that bakkie actually took a chance to get through, but they weren't as lucky as the taxi, because then a train was coming from behind me, and that's when 7 people were killed. So we'll keep an eye on the story as it unfolds and just try to speak to local authorities that have arrived on the scene and just how the residents are feeling at this point. I must say once again, Shante, that it's a very, very somber mood here this morning. With that, it's back to you in the studio.
It definitely is, and also just seeing some of those horrific pictures doing the rounds on social media. Also seeing views of that video that Nomawethu Solwanle had mentioned of community members actually going in and praying with regards to what took place there. In some other news this morning, we have been giving you the build-up and the coverage of the 2018 Freedom Day celebrations that have been taking place in Bloemfontein. And we do have Aldrin Samper, who is on the ground for SABC News this morning, giving us the prelude into that. And now we have seen that the official start of the commemoration is set to get underway in the next couple of moments.
To stand, and military spectators are to salute on the command national salute, and civilian male spectators to remove their headdress. Upon withdrawal of the podium group, all spectators are requested to remain seated until the parade has marched off. The parade consists of members of the National Ceremonial Guard. The parade commander is Major V.R. Leroux, and the parade warrant officer is Warrant Officer Class 1, S.J. Maputa. The band on parade is from the South African Army, from Pretoria, under the direction of Major A. Stragnall, and the drum major is Corporal P.L. Molamo. The 21-round gun salute will be executed by the South African Army Artillery Formation Headquarters Gun Salute Group under the command of Captain S.L. Minyuku. All spectators are requested to switch off their cellular telephones and refrain from smoking for the duration of the parade. On completion of the parade, invited guests are welcome to enjoy refreshments at the respective venues, which they will be ushered to. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for honoring our invitation. Your attendance is highly appreciated. We trust that you will enjoy this event with us. Thank you.
Just dipping out of those celebrations that are taking place in the Free State in Bloemfontein as it commences. Well, New York is also celebrating Freedom Day. South African diplomats say they appreciate the support that the international community has played in defeating apartheid. Around 200 people gathered to mark the day at the Big Apple. SABC's Ashoan Bryce Peace reports.
The music was well appointed. The late Hugh Masekela's iconic song, in a year both Madiba and Mama Albertina Sisulu would have been 100 years old.
As we remember the selfless sacrifices of the countless heroes and heroines of our struggle, who fought tirelessly to overcome the brutal apartheid system through dedication, they left an indelible mark on our society, having laid the foundation for a united, non-racial, non-sexist and prosperous society.
He also used the occasion to promote South Africa's bid for a non-permanent seat of the UN Security Council and invoked Madiba's legacy in the future work of the global organization. The UN called it a day to recognize the achievements of South Africa's first black president.
Freedom Day is rightly joyous celebration marking South Africa's triumph over apartheid and the extension of voting rights to millions of people who had been disenfranchised solely because of the color of their skin. This day is also a moment to recognize the achievements of Nelson Mandela and all those who stood with him.
Another highlight was the presence of South Africa's Miss Universe.
As the first born-free Miss South Africa, Freedom Day has always been a very special day to me. I'm happy to be a part of a generation whose responsibility it is to make sure that we keep moving and working forward together.
Happy birthday, South Africa, from everyone in the Big Apple. Sherman Bryceby's SABC News, New York.
Well, earlier political analyst Dr. Pete Abraham Krokamp spoke more on Freedom Day. We've also been giving you those live visuals that are coming through from Free State this morning in Bloemfontein. We are also awaiting that address from President Cyril Ramaphosa. Let's cross live.
Well, you're seeing live visuals coming straight out of Bloemfontein, where we are celebrating Freedom Day. It's the 24th anniversary of the country. As you heard in that piece by Sherman Bryceby's, happy birthday, South Africa, as you celebrate your 24 years. And today we'll have a speech being delivered by President Cyril Ramaphosa. And as I've been indicating throughout the morning, that it would be quite interesting to hear what the president has to say. His personal anecdotes, the days leading up to the moment of the 27th of April, the day that many South Africans, black and white, went out to vote. As you can see on the grandstands here, where it's a 20,000 capacity stadium, people have already started to fill up the stadium, and the president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, standing by. Of course, there'll be a ceremonial guard of honor, and the president will inspect the ceremonial guard of honor, and then after that it will be the 21-gun salute for the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force. These are the men and women who have pledged allegiance to the Constitution. These are the men and women who have pledged allegiance to the President and pledged allegiance to the flag of South Africa, as you heard in that interview earlier on with the Minister of Defence Force as well, Nosiviwe Mapisa-Nqakula. I think the President is about to make his way to the podium, where he will inspect the National Guard of Honor. Let's just take a listen as we all take a stand and welcome the President of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa.
Ramaphosa, the Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force.
Well, there you have it. The Commander-in-Chief of the South African National Defence Force, Cyril Ramaphosa. And of course, there will be the 21-gun salute that we expect. And just listening to the cheering here at the stadium as he takes to the podium.
Ladies and gentlemen, you may be seated. Ladies and gentlemen, a band demonstration, fly past, and an air display will now commence. The South African Army Band from Pretoria will now perform an item, and thereafter a fly past and an air display will be demonstrated by Gripen fighter aircraft from 2 Squadron Air Force Base, Makhado. are Gripen fighter aircraft. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes a band demonstration, fly past, and an air display. Ladies and gentlemen, please stand for the final compliment. Military spectators are to salute on the command national salute, and civilian male spectators to remove their headdress. Ladies and gentlemen, please remain seated for the withdrawal of the podium group and until the guard of honor has marched off. Ladies and gentlemen, this concludes the parade. Invited guests are once more reminded to enjoy refreshments at their respective venues, which they will be ushered to. Thank you for your attendance and enjoy the rest of the Freedom Day activities. Thank you.
Alala, people of Free State, alala. Alala, Free State, alala. Alala, SANDF, alala. The President of the Republic of South Africa is now entering the stage. May we all rise for the President of the Republic of South Africa.
Freedom Day, alala, alala. Freedom Day, alala, alala. Freedom Day, Freedom Day, alala, 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 alala. Freedom Day, alala, 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 alala. Freedom Day, alala, 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 alala. Freedom Day, alala, 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 freedom. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. La freedom. Nelson Mandela. Freedom Day. La freedom. 27th of April. 1994. Freedom Day. Alala, 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 alala. Freedom Day. Alala, alala. Freedom Day. Alala, 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 alala. Freedom Day. Freedom Day. Alala, alala, alala. The year of Nelson Mandela. Freedom Day in Mangau. Berenye Seusinganga. Alala, alala, freedom. Siwelele, siwelele. Freedom Day, Freedom Day. Alala, the year of Albertina Sisulu. The year of Nelson Mandela. Alala, 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 freedom day. Alala, Jim. Alala, alala, freedom. Alala, 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 freedom day.
Okay, thank you very much. We can all be seated. Without any waste of time, we can be seated, President. Without any waste of time, we'll commence with our program today, a beautiful day celebrating 24 years of democracy. I'm having MEC Lieto, who's going to be my co-director of the program today. It would be in order to first acknowledge in our midst His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa. Can we give a round of applause to His Excellency the President Ramaphosa, the President of the Republic of South Africa. Alala, President Ramaphosa, alala. Alala, President Ramaphosa, alala. Also acknowledge the ministers and the deputy ministers here present, the Premier of Free State, Man Tombela, and the members of the Executive Council, Executive Mayor of the districts and other mayors who are here with us, members of the Diplomatic Corps, MPs, MPLs, and councillors who are here with us, business community, the religious leaders, traditional leaders, distinguished guests, members of the media, and fellow South Africans. This year's celebration of our Freedom Day is done under the theme, the year of Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela, towards full realization of freedom through radical socio-economic transformation. The late President Mandela and Manu Ntsikelelo Sisulu would have turned 100 years this year had they lived. We also acknowledge the 40th anniversary of the passing on of the President of PAC, President Mangaliso Sobukwe, reminding each other that as we celebrate our freedom today, because we have a lot to celebrate since 1994, whilst we acknowledge that the road ahead still needs a lot of work. The road to our democracy in South Africa is drenched in blood and punctuated by centuries of racial and economic subjugation, discrimination and oppression. But over and above that, we are celebrating ordinary people who made a contribution in the liberation of our country. The 2018 National Freedom Day marks 24 years of freedom and democracy. It is a marked departure from the colonial and apartheid oppression. Freedom and democracy in South Africa has taken a quantum leap from the oppressive regime that we have today, the constitutional order. It is important to note and acknowledge glaring reality that South Africa freedom will remain hollow until we attain economic freedom. That is why this phase of our struggle is the phase for radical socio-economic transformation. It is the phase which follows the vision of the government of the Republic through the National Development Plan. We are going to commence in driving our program, and without any waste of time, ask the Premier of this province of Free State to come and welcome all of us. Alala Free State, alala. Alala Free State, alala. Alala Premier Ntombela, alala.
Halala Free State, halala! Halala Free State, halala! Uzoyithola kanjani? Uhlala koneni? Viva President Ramaphosa, viva! Viva President Ramaphosa, viva! Pata President Ramaphosa, pata! Ke a leboha baahi ba Freistata, baahi ba Afrika Borwa. His Excellency the President of the Republic of South Africa, Ntate Mopresidente Ramaphosa, Matuna atenka kaofela, Premier, the ambassadors, Matuna di province, Marena, Aruna, Baruti, Sechaba kaofela, dumelang. Re tlo bitsetsa sefaleng jwale mo Premier. Re tlo bitsa mo Premier mme Seforasi Sintombela a tlo re amohela mare pele a tla ke kopa hore ke utlwile pina e monate ka mona le ka mona mare re se ga bina tse ngata a go tla ipinela jwale ke kopa hore re mo amohele ka ditlatsi tse kgolo ala la Premier Mantombela ala halala Freistata halala halala Freistata halala halala
Freistata ha se mosebetsi o motelele haholo. Mopresidente Ntate Ramaphosa, batho ba Freistata ba re ke o amohele, ba ya o amohela mona Freistata provinceng e ntle ka mokgwa o makatsang. Hape wa bona hore re tlo amohela re Mangaung, ene o ya tseba hore Mangaung mona ke hona mane mono ho tswallwa ANC. Re a tseba hore African National Congress e tswalletse mona ka mora rona fela mona kereke e teng ya Wasele moo baruti ba neng ba kopane teng dingaka e le hore ba etsa ba forma ANC. The people of the Free State are honored to host the 24th celebration of Freedom Day. Working together with the people of the Free State, we have achieved so much, but we still need to do more. Still more has to happen. Comrade President Ramaphosa, yesterday in the Free State Legislature, held a budget vote, as well as the Department of Agriculture and Rural Development in a very small town, which is called Tweleng. I use this opportunity to share with the members of the masses that gathered there the story of one woman, Mema Khatebe. His story is like this. Makhatebe related how she worked as a domestic farm worker for Afrikaner family for many years. She related how she treated children in that home of hers. Mema Khatebe o na sebeletsa monga hae mane a tshwere bana ba hae jwale ka bana ba hae. O na hodisa bana ba mono ha le kgwaleno a ba hlapisa a etsa dintho tsohle a etsa le dintho tsa sa di etseng bana ba hae. Empa ka mora dilemonyana bona bana bao a ba hodisitseng ba ile ba mo tebela ba re hana molemo o sa bile a tsofetse a tsamaye. O na dula ha bohloko mone dipolasing mara o ile ya ka lekeisheneng mo ileng a fumana ntlo a fumantshwa metsi a fumantshwa motlakase mme ka hoo a go ya leboha hobane le bana ba hae ba ile ba thola grant support. Indeed, South Africa is a better place today than it was 24 years ago. It is therefore not a mistake to celebrate a Freedom Day on the 27th of April. Ho motlotlo bo monate ebile ho molemo hore re celebrate Freedom Day. Indeed, we are free, but we know, President Uri, we are free, but we still have nothing. Ha re na letho, ha ntse re sena mesebetsi, ntse re sena tjhelete, ntse re sena lefatshe, re ntse re sena tsohle. So o tla batla hore le ma-Afrika re kopaneng, re be ngatana le nngwe, re etse nnete ya hore re thola lefatshe la rona ebile re etse bonnete ba hore bana ba rona ba thola mesebetsi. Hobane ha re ntse re le divided, re kekebe ra ba ra thola mesebetsi. Ene ke a leboha ma-Freistata hobane re tswa di-conferenceng dintho di fedile. Ha hona mopresidente re na le yena, re na le mopresidente a le mong fela ke Ntate Cyril Ramaphosa. Ha hona e mong, re tla tlameha mo support-a hobane le yena a re ise re be re lo thola sena se re se batlang. With those words, I would like to welcome you, President, in the beautiful, peaceful province of the Free State. I would like to welcome you in home, ya Freistata, ya Lakoto, ya Free State Skat, Bloemfontein Celtics, Suwelewele, re a leboha President.
Halala Premier Ntombela, halala. Halala Free State, halala. Halala Gauteng, halala. Halala Mpumalanga, halala. Thank you very much, Premier. Without any waste of time, we will request Respectfully, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Ramaphosa, to come and talk to the nation and give the nation his message, Your Excellency.
Dumelang batho ba Freistata, dumelang. Sanbonani. Abshin. Dimacheroni. Goeiemôre. Program Director, Minister Natim Tetwa.
Very warm welcome to our SABC2 viewers as we give you this live broadcast of the 2018 Freedom Day celebrations in Bloemfontein. Currently, President Cyril Ramaphosa is addressing the crowds. Let's cross live.
Messi Sintombela, Majoro Waruna Mona Freistata, the MEC Zaruna Zamona Freistata, Your Majesties, traditional leaders and leaders of various political formations, the leaders of trade union formations, and civil society organizations, bomme le bontate, ke motlotlo haholo ho ema pela lona mona ka letsatsi lena le bohlokwa haholo bophelong ba rona re le batho ba mona South Africa, letsatsi la tokoloho ya rona South Africa mona. Ke motlotlo haholo ho ba mona Freistata provinceng ena e hara naha ya rona kaofela, province e nang le mofuthu, provinceng e ileng ya etsa sure hore mona Mangaung ka 1912 ho theiwe mokgatlo ona o bitswang African National Congress o ileng wa lwanela tokoloho ya rona. This is the warmth in this province that for many years incubated the many brave freedom fighters of this province. It is the warmth that also enveloped the late Mama Winnie Mandela during her years of banishment in Brantford. It was in this province that the women of Bloemfontein, of Kroonstad, of Winberg and Jagersfontein in 1913 organized the very first anti-pass protest in our country. Province ena ke province ya dinatla, ke province ya batho ba ileng ba lwanela tokoloho ya rona, ke province ya bomme ba ileng ba ikemisetsa hore ka nnete ba tla lwanela tokoloho ena ya rona pele ho ba le di-protest ho ba le di-protests tsa dipasa. Ile ya ba mona Freistata ka selemo sa 1913, mo bomme ba ileng ba ema ka maoto ba re tjhe, rona re ka se tshware dipasa. Ka nnete ba hana bomme bano. Their defiance and their desire for equality, many of these women were subsequently imprisoned and subjected to hard labor. Ba ilwe ba iswa tjhankaneng, ba sebetsa ka thata, ba hlopheha, ba ile ba arolwa mo baneng ba bona, ba lwanela tokoloho ena e ka letsatsi lena la di 27 tsa April re ketekang. On this day, 24 years ago, we were able, as South Africans, for the first time in our lives, to exercise our democratic right to vote as equals before the law for a government of our choice, marking our country's first historic transition from the dark period of apartheid, oppression, to a free and equal society. It is the day on which our rightful place as a people deserving of respect and dignity was restored, where the humiliation of racial discrimination formally came to an end in our land. This is the day when the struggle of our forebears, the struggles of Ngungunyane, the struggles of Makado, the struggles of Kechwayo, the struggles of Moshweshwe, Sikukuni, Bambata, Dube, Makeke, Lutuli, Mandela, Sisulu, Tambo, Ngoi, Mumpati, and many others, Dade Mufutsanyane, and indeed many others, were finally vindicated as the dream for which they sacrificed now became a reality. With our new democratic constitution embracing equal rights and opportunities for all, we ceased to be a pariah in the land of our birth. We had at last an opportunity to build a new and better life for our people. Through our democratic constitution and progressive laws, through a concerted program of social and economic redress, we have made great progress in transforming this country. La ho ka thweng ka nnete yona tswelopele re bone ho tloela ka 1994 naha ena ya borona a isa tshwana le South Africa yane ya pele ho 1994 re tsweletse pele ka nnete ba rata kapa barate re tsweletse pele ihlile re ntse re tswella pele re sebetsa ka nnete. Women now exercise significant influence in public life thanks to the constitution. Bomme naheng ena ya bo rona ba ne ba shebelwa tlase, bomme ba ne ba sa fiwe monyetla wa hore ho be le mesebetsi e bohlokwa e ba e etsang, le meputso ya bona e ne le tlase haholo ho ya banna. Kasheko lena mona Freistata re na le premier wa rona o aleng mme. Freistata ka nnete e tsamaela pele ka jekulena go tswile monna go kene mme ntho eno ra e leboa re re halala bomme halala. Halala premier wa rona halala. E hlile re mo kgethile hore a be premier, re mmona hore o na le bokgoni, ho na le tseo a tsebang ho di etsa. E hlile re tseba hore o tla re etapele mona Freistata. Re le ra mmona le ka tsela a na bua ka yona, le ka tsela a na ikemiseditse ka yona, e hlile le ka tsela e a tsamayang ka yona. Re ile ra bona hore tjhe mona ke premier e tla re sebeletsang. Ke a kgolwa hore la robetse hae lapeng mane o robala ho tshwana le premier, re a mo leboha hore a be premier ya rona. The lives of many poor women have improved through better education, accessible health care, and the provision of basic services. And yet, while we have done much to address the racial and gender distortions of the past, so much more still remains to be done. So many of our people still experience hunger. Millions are still unemployed. Many still do not have houses, electricity, or even clean water. Ho ntse ho na le batho ba bangata mona lefatsheng la heso ba senang mesebetsi. Batho ba bangata ba hlophehang. Ho ntse ho na le batho ba bangata ba senang metsi mo ba dulang teng. Ho ntse ho na le batho ba bangata ba senang le seweretse mo ba dulang teng. E hlile bongata ba bona a ba soka ba fumana dintlo. Laeba dintlo tse fetang 4 milione di ahilwe, re ntse re fumana hore bongata ba batho ba heso ba ntse ba hloka dintlo. Mesebetsi ya rona re le mmuso wa South Africa, re le batho ba naha ena o ntse o le mongata. Therefore, as we celebrate the freedoms that we have achieved and the great advances that we have made, we need to use this Freedom Day to affirm our determination to intensify the struggle of socio-economic freedom for all our people. Our people cannot be free if they do not have jobs. Our people cannot be free if they do not have education and if they do not have better livelihoods. We know that the advent of democracy did not automatically heal the divisions of the past. We must work resolutely to remove the obstacles that still divide our society and strengthen the many ties that bind us together. For example, we still, as the National Development Plan said, we are still divided on a number of fronts. We are still divided between black and white. We are still divided between young and old. We are still divided between rich and poor, between rural and urban. we are still divided in many, many ways. Our task is to try and bridge those divisions. Our task as a nation in formation is to make sure that those gaps and those divisions are closed. On a day like this, when we all celebrate Freedom Day, it is a day when all South Africans, black and white, united as a nation, should be celebrating this day and sparing a few hours to come to a stadium like this to celebrate who we are. Because on this day, we don't only celebrate our freedom, we also celebrate our future. We also celebrate who we are, a people that are diverse, a people that have different languages, different cultures, and yet a common future. We are celebrating this Freedom Day in the centenary year of former President Nelson Mandela and Mama Sisulu, our brave and consummate freedom fighters, would have turned 100 years. Mayor Albertina Sisulu was a valiant freedom fighter who undertook dangerous work in the underground as she mobilized the mass formations of the democratic movement. Mayor Albertina Sisulu o ile a re ha ntate Walter Sisulu a isitswe tjhankaneng for bophelo ba hae kaofela. O ile a re le yena o tla nka moo ntate Sisulu a sileng teng a tswelle pele le ntwa ena ya tokoloho. O ile a kena ntwa ya tokoloho ka boyena a mobilize batho ba haeso hore ka nnete qetellong re fumane tokoloho. We must agree with the then Secretary of Justice, who in the 1960s informed the police commissioner that Mama Sisulu needed to be watched carefully because she was as politically capable as a jailed husband and very good in organizing and oratory. Through her strong values, her humility, and her commitment to the struggle for democracy, Mama Sisulu remains an inspiration to us as we navigate the challenges of building a society that is responsive to the needs of our people. It was Madiba who cautioned us not to be captivated by the allure of the achievement of freedom. Though we have climbed a great hill, he said, we dare not linger because there are many more hills to climb still. Though we have achieved a constitutional democracy in which all have equal rights, we dare not linger because we still have much to do to build an inclusive economy that serves the interests of all our people and advances their lives. We cannot deny that we have made tremendous strides in improving the economic participation of black people and women in South Africa. We have a middle class that has grown significantly over the many years. This middle class, largely made of black people, started emerging in real earnest after 1994. Despite the great disparities in opportunity, we have emerging a new generation of black entrepreneurs, managers, professionals, and artisans. The considerable rise over the last 2 decades in the number of learners in school and the number of students enrolled at higher education places in South Africa is a strong position to achieve inclusive growth and development. Se re thabisang haholo ko hore pele ha 1994 bana ba rona ba bangata ba ne ba sa kene dikolo. Kajeko lena bana ba rona ba bangata ba kena dikolo. Selemo le selemo ho kena bana ba 1 million ka tsatsi la ho qala la sekolo. Ke yona ntho e re bontshang hore ka nnete bana ba rona le batswadi ba bona ba nkela thuto e le ntho e kgolo haholo bophelong ba bona. Bao ba kenang di-university re fumana hore le bona ka nnete lenane la bona le ntse le ya hodimo selemo le selemo. Ke yona ntho e re thabisang eno. We have done much to reduce poverty through social grants, access to health care, and to the provision of houses to the poor. However, if we do not end poverty, then we need to create much broader, if we do want to end poverty rather, then we need to create much broader economic opportunities for our people. We need to grow our economy and create decent work. We need to attract investment on a much greater scale, and we need to improve the education and skills of all our people. At the same time, we need to transform our economy with regard to ownership, the control thereof, and the management of this economy of ours, so that black South Africans and women are fully represented and equally benefit from this economy that we want to grow. In short, we need to intensify radical economic transformation in our country. It is for these reasons that we, as we celebrate Freedom Month, we are embarking on an ambitious new investment drive that aims to draw local and international investors into those parts of the economy that have the greatest potential for job creation. In preparation for an investment conference, which I spoke about in the State of the Nation address, we are sending out 4 special envoys to meet with potential investors in major centers across South Africa and indeed across the world. Re batla hore bao ba nang le ditjhelete ba mose le ba mona hae re ba bitse batle ba tlo kenya ditjhelete tsa bona ho di-company tse ngata mona re ahe mesebetsi. Re fumane hore ho bohlokwa hore re fumane ditjhelete re di kenye ho di-company tse ngata tsa rona hore re kgone ho aha mesebetsi. Dinaha tse tswelang pele ho aha mesebetsi ke dinaha tse etsang hore ba kgone ho bitsa bao ba nang le ditjhelete ba tle ba tlo kenya ditjhelete naheng ya bona. Le rona re leetong lena leno la ho bitsa bao ba nang le ditjhelete ba di tlise mona ba tlo di investa mona re ahe mesebetsi re ahe di-company tsa rona eo re tla etsa ka nnete re ikemiseditse re itse re batlo re raise 100 billion ya di-dollars ke 1.2 trillion ya diranta e re batlang gore e tlise mona South Africa e tlo aha mesebetsi. We are also working to make our economy more competitive and more attractive to investors. We are sustaining our massive investment in infrastructure, building roads, building bridges, railway lines, ports, as well as schools, hospitals, and colleges and clinics. Re batla hore re tswelle pele le mesebetsi ya ho aha ditsela tsa rona, dipetlele, re ahe matamo gore batho ba rona ba fumane metsi. Ditjhelete tseo tse ntse di lahleha hohle mmusong, re batla hore di kgutliswe ditjhelete tseno di tle di tlo aha matamo ana. Ditjhelete tseno re tla di latela re be re di fumane ka hobane re batla hore di tlo sebeletsa setjhaba sa heso, e ska ba ditjhelete tse sebeletsang batho ba itseng fela. Ha re shebisisa hantle re fumana hore tjhelete e teng naheng ena ya rona. Tjhelete eo e le nna ke ikemiseditse hore e be tjhelete e sebeletsang setjhaba. Re sebeletse setjhaba ka tjhelete eno. Re ahe dintlo, re ise bana ba rona dikolong. So re bao ba re ba bitsang ba tlo kenya ditjhelete tsa bona mona, le rona re batla hore ditjhelete tse re nang le tsona le tseo tse lahlehileng le tseo tse utswitsweng di kgutliswe di tlo sebeletsa setjhaba. South Africa ena e tswelle pele hantle. Ha re le tjena, we are fixing our state-owned enterprises. State-owned enterprise by state-owned enterprise, we are putting them right. We are appointing the right people. We are appointing the right board of directors. We are straightening out their business plans. We want to ensure that our state-owned enterprises serve the interests of our people as a whole and do not serve the interests of just a few. This we are determined to do because those enterprises are owned by the people of our country. And on this Freedom Day, we want to free our state-owned enterprises of every corrupt act, of every wrongdoing. We want to free our SOEs so that we set them free to work for our people more effectively. And this we are on the way to doing. We are also using industrial incentives. We are also setting up special economic zones. We are also using our local procurement requirements to expand our manufacturing capacity. We do this so that we can increase the industrial capacity of our country so that we can improve jobs. And we are focusing on localization of production of goods and services we are focusing on localization of procurement. In support of this, we are working to de-racialize our economy by strengthening our broad-based Black economic empowerment policies. We are also investing in Black industrialists, opening up markets for new Black entrants through more effective competition policies and using the buying power of the state to support Black business. The state is serious about supporting the emerging Black businesses that are owned by our people. And I mean Black businesses that are really operating, Black businesses that are doing things. Those are the businesses the state wants to support. Ising bao ba tlabang fela ba leka ba ntse ba ya mane le mane ba sa etse mesebetsi e tlameileng hore e etswe. Nako e nngwe o fumane hore ba patalwa ba sa etsa mesebetsi e ne ba tlameile hore ba e etse. Mmuso wa rona o batla ho ema ka morao ha bano ba ikemiseditseng, re batla ho tshwarana matsoho le bano ba batlang ho haha di-business tsa bona, re ba tiise matsoho hore ba sebetse hantle, ba sebeletse setjhaba. We've made important progress in improving the conditions of the working poor. Parliament is currently finalizing legislation so that we can implement a national minimum wage for the first time in our country's history, fulfilling the demand that was made at the Congress of the People in 1995. In 1995, our forebears said they want a national minimum wage, a wage below which no worker should earn. That was a demand made in 1955. It is a great victory for the workers of this country that today we stand on the cusp of having a national minimum wage. It is a tribute to the social partners, our unions, the union federations that were involved in the discussions, NACTU, FEDUSA, and COSATU, that represented millions of our workers in this country, yes, as well as our social partners in the form of public organizations that represent our people, as in social organizations where our people live, as well as business. Some people have argued that the starting minimum wage of 20 Rand an hour is not a living wage. Yes, they are correct. 20 Rand an hour is not a living wage. It was never seen as a living wage. Some argue that the national minimum wage will not end income inequality. Yes, they are correct, it will not. But what the national minimum wage does provide is a firm and unassailable foundation, which is agreed by all social partners, from which we are going to advance the struggle for a living wage. The struggle for a living wage must be engaged. 20 Rand an hour asiyo na living wage. We want our people to earn more money. We are called a middle income country, and we want our people to earn much higher. What we needed to do was to balance between those people who are earning very little today. We must remember that the national minimum wage is going to increase the income of over 6.6 million working South Africans. 6.6 working South Africans are suddenly going to earn much higher than what they are earning now. We found that 6.6 million workers in our country are earning way below 20 Rand an hour. Through this, we are going to lift 6.6 million workers. An increase of that size and that extent is really unprecedented in our history, and we must celebrate this as a foundation that will enable working people in our country to go on with the struggle, with the fight for a living wage. The struggle for a living wage must be engaged by all. And in fact, our trade unions must be at the forefront of this struggle to fight for a living wage. What we have done is to provide a foundation, and let us use this foundation to fight for a better wage, a living wage for our people. To advance radical economic transformation, we are working to empower the youth of our country through education, skills development, and workplace experience. This year, we have introduced free higher education for students from poor households. Kannete tswelopele e re bonang ka nnete kgolo. Kasheko lena bana bao ba hlahang malapeng a batho a batswadi ba hlophehang, a batswadi ka nnete ba sa amoheleng tjhelete e ngata, re bana ba bona le bona ba kgona ho ya di-collegeng le di-university ba sa patala letho ka free education yena. Ke yona tswelopele e bohlokwa ena e re batla ho e bona mona South Africa. Ba heso re ntse re tswella pele hanyane re ya pele mo re batlang ho ya teng. Tsena tse ntse re di etsa re ska ra di nyefola kapa ra di shebela tlase. Ke tsona ntho tse bohlokwa tse bontshang hore ka nnete koloi ena a ya ema, e na le mabili, e hlile mabili a yona a tsamaya, ebile e na le engine ena e a iqhoba e ya pele. Re tswella pele le hao ba bang ba ntse ba nyefola ba shebela tlase dintho tsena tse re di etsang. Together with an accessible and quality basic education system, this measure of free education for children from poor families promises to break the cycle of poverty. It means that millions of South Africans who are born into poverty will, through education, be able to live comfortable lives and secure lives as adults. Constantly, we are breaking down the barriers of education. We are working also to ensure that young people who graduate from our schools, colleges, and universities are also made ready for the world of work. together with our social partners in business and labor, we recently launched the Youth Employment Service Program, which aims to provide work experience opportunities for 1 million unemployed young people over the next 3 years. Milioni kaofela ya batho ba batjha ba tla fumana monyetla wa hore ba kene mesebetsing e tla ba rutang mesebetsi kaofela ya economy. Nteo le yona ke tswelopele ena a re soka re bona dinaheng tse ngata tse tshwanang le lena ya rona. Re ntse re qhoba re tswella pele ka nnete. Economic freedom, fellow South Africans, means that the land that was taken away from black South Africans also needs to be returned. Our forebears said in the Freedom Charter that the land must be shared amongst those who work it. They said this because they had realized that even in 1955, that only a few people in our country owned the greater portion of our land, and that as they owned this portion, the notion of sharing the land did not even enter their minds. And it is for this reason that our forebears demanded in the Freedom Charter that the land shall be shared amongst those who work it. They wanted their land back so that it can be used as an economic resource to improve their lives. They want this important resource, land, to be shared as it is set out in the Freedom Charter. Land is an important economic resource. Its energy, its economic value, and its social power must be unlocked and be put to good use in the hands of all our people. We have a situation in our country where we have masses of tracts of land, some owned by the government, some owned by state-owned enterprises, some owned by companies, yes, some owned by individuals. And this land at the moment is not being shared by the majority of our people. The majority of our people, many of whom are hungry for land so that they can use it as an economic resource, are locked out of the utilization of land. So we are saying, we are committed to accelerate the redistribution of land in our country. The redistribution of land, its time has come. It cannot be avoided. We cannot run away from it. We cannot hide our heads in the sand. It has to happen, and it must happen now in our lifetime. This is what our forebears fought for. Now, this is land both in urban and rural areas, and this should be to ensure that poor South Africans are able to own land and have the means to work it. But more importantly, as this land is returned to our people, the government will have to do everything it can to support those to whom the land will be given to. Among the measures that we are going to use to accelerate redistribution of land is that of expropriation without compensation, as we look at various categories of land. We are going to be able to do precisely that. We call on all South Africans to be part of this broad consultation process on how we should implement this decision of making sure that land should be shared amongst our people, and that we should do this in ways that makes redistribution of land meaningful, which will contribute to strengthening our economy, which will also strengthen agricultural production and make sure that we improve food security. Now, this gives us great opportunities. As we redistribute land, we should be guided by what our forebears set out in the Freedom Charter, that the land must be shared amongst those who work it. And as we do all this, we must empower our people. As we empower them, government must support them, and we must ensure that we grow our economy, we grow our agricultural production as we effect this whole redistribution of land. This gives us great opportunities. This makes our resolution an important resolution that is implementable. This measure aims also to extend property rights to all South Africans, so that it is not only a few South Africans who have property rights. We earned our political rights, our democratic rights together collectively, and so must we all be given an opportunity to participate in the economic rights that are due to us as South Africans. Fellow South Africans, this is a day on which the dream of a free Africa was brought ever closer to realization. As South Africa, one of the last colonial outposts on the continent, tasted freedom. It was a culmination of a dream for which many in this country, on this continent, and across the entire world sacrificed a great deal. We remain grateful for the solidarity and the assistance that we received from the international community, and are determined that we ourselves should be champions of democracy, peace, and human rights across the world. We will use our leadership and membership of SADC, our membership of BRICS, and the G20, the Commonwealth, and many other international bodies to forge a new world order founded on equality, dignity, mutual respect, cooperation, as well as human rights. Our democratic breakthrough was a huge victory for this continent and the freedom-loving nations of the world. The struggle for freedom consumed the boundless energy and extraordinary talents of our people. Now we have an opportunity to put our remarkable opportunities and capabilities as a people to advance human progress. Our duty as custodians of this democracy, as the owners of this democracy, as the beneficiaries of this democracy, as the defenders of this democracy, is to direct all our resources to conquer poverty, joblessness, racial hatred, anarchy, violence, and lawlessness, illiteracy, and idleness, and place our country on a path of growth, development, and lasting freedom. But more importantly, It is also to make sure that we have a stable democracy, a stable progressive government at all levels of our government in South Africa, at national level, at provincial level, at local government level, where our people live, so that we are able to provide service delivery that is going to instill loyalty amongst our people to our republic. And on this day, let us all pledge our loyalty to our flag, to our national symbols, to our national anthem, and to our country. On this day, let us remember that first and foremost, we are South Africans. And first and foremost, we are one nation. First and foremost, we must be a nation that is united in our diversity, a nation that is moving forward to achieve the ideals that were set out in the Freedom Charter. On this day, as I end, let us remember the founding father of our nation, Nelson Rolihlahla Mandela. Let us also remember Mama Albertina Sisulu and pledge that as a nation, we are going to continue where they stopped their work. We are going to continue to advance the lives of our people, and we are going to ensure that we subscribe and put into practice their values with integrity and with commitment. Kamantswano, ke a le leboha batho ba Freistata hore re fumane sebaka sena le monyetla ona wa ho buisana le wa ho kopana ka letsatsi lena le bohlokwa haholo bophelong ba rona re le batho ba South Africa. Ka letsatsi lena ka 1994 re ile ra fumana tokoloho ya rona. A re hlompheng tokoloho ena, re hlompheng naha ya rona, re hlompheng tsohle tse etsang hore naha ena ya rona e be naha e bonahalang hore ka nnete e tswella pele. Ke a le leboha batho ba Freistata, ke re forward le Freistata forward. Forward le Freistata forward. Forward le Freedom Day forward. Ke a leboha.
Amandla! Viva President Ramaphosa, viva! Re a leboha President, re utlwile molaetsa wa hao, re ready, re roma rona, re lo etsa mosebetsi moo re dulang teng. Jwale he ntle le tshenyo ya nako, seo re tlo se etsa hona jwale le ntse le dutse fela jwalo, re tla bitsa majoro a lebohe. Ha qeta ho leboha, Presidente e tla re ha DJ Finzo a ntse re tsoka matheka, Presidente a ba tsamaya a le dumedisa hobane ka baka la nako hoseng ha fihla ha kgona ho pota ho lona moo a le bona le haufinyana. Jwale re ntse re dutse jwalo he, ha ke bitsetsa sefaleng majoro wa phethahatso wa masepala wa Mangaung, mme Oli Mlamleli a tlo re leboha hore re itshwere hantle. Mamelang, ke kopa re mamelaneng. Mona re tlile ho tlo keteka, re lwanetse ditokelo ha ke re. Re na le tsona kaofela kajeno, ke tlo kopa fela hore mathata a rona a ske a etsa hore re bonwe re le batho ba sa lokang ma-Freistata. Ke a ikopela Presidente o keta o bua le rona. ke a tseba gore mathata a teng mare mathata ano ha se ka etsa gore re bonagale re le batho ba sa lokang be ka reng ha re bua batho mathata a tla fela go hlompholla motho ha o fedise mathata ke a ikopela tswetswe baahi ba Afrika Borwa ke a leboha baahi ba Vrystaat.
Dumela President Ramaphosa, dumela. La Bloemfontein, la. Dumela President Ramaphosa, dumela. Uzayithola kanjani? Uhlele koneni. La Vrystaat, halala. La Vrystaat, halala. Alibongwe. Igama lamakosikazi. Auta murua bathong, auta. Auta murua bathong, auta. La mmuso wa ANC, halala. Amandla. Awethu. Motsamaisi wa mosebetsi a re lebohe ho ba teng ha President Cyril Ramaphosa a tlileng mona Vrystaat ho etsa bonnete ba hore re fumana letsatsi lena. Re a utlwisisa hore o re kgalemetse. Re a utlwisisa hore Presidente o itse not in your name. Re a leboha ha o re hopoditse hore Vrystaat e mofuthu. Re leboha mopresidente le batho bohle. Re a leboha, ke a leboha.
Amandla! 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 Re a leboha he batho ba ntse ba bina ke kopa le fe motho a tlo etsa tribute nako. Baahi ba Vrystaat Amandla! Khona nyela mona ke kopa le dilo fela hanyane. Ka morao ka mona ke kopa le lona le dule hanyane. I hope the tribute is ready. Stage manager, are you ready with the tribute? Ke a leboha he ka pina, ke a leboha mona le mametse. Ka morao ka mo ke kopa le mamele. Ka morao ka mo ke kopa le mamele re etse item e latelang. Is the tribute ready? Ke a leboha ke tlo le fa nako ya ho bina ka morao ka moo.
Well, the Freedom Day celebrations here at in Bloemfontein officially coming to end with that keynote address there by President Cyril Ramaphosa. But tell you what happened immediately after the president finished off his speech. It was Mayor Oli, who is the mayor of Mangaung, the city of Bloemfontein. and she was also just paying tribute to the president and some of the people here on the grandstand. Some of the people who came here for the Freedom Day celebration started heckling her and started booing her, but she continued throughout and praised the president on the speech that is delivered. A speech which touched on a range of issues, and quite interesting is this issue around the 20 Rand minimum wage, 20 Rand per hour minimum wage, which translates to around 3,500. If you remember that on Wednesday it was SAFTU led by the General Secretary, Zwelinzima Mavavi, that marched through the streets of the big cities, including PE as well as in Johannesburg, where they said that the 3,500 Rand or the 20 Rand per hour is not a living wage. And the president here, Cyril Ramaphosa, who had played a pivotal role in broking that deal while he was still deputy president of the country, said indeed that the 20 Rand per hour or the 3,500 Rand is not a living wage. And let's just take a listen to what he had to say about that.
Some people have argued that the starting minimum wage of 20 Rand an hour is not a living wage. Yes, they are correct. 20 Rand an hour is not a living wage. It was never seen as a living wage. Some argue that the national minimum wage will not end income inequality. Yes, they are correct, it will not. But what the national minimum wage does provide is a firm and unassailable foundation, which is agreed by all social partners, from which we are going to advance the struggle for a living wage. The struggle for a living wage must be engaged. 20 Rand an hour, or not living wage. We want our people to earn more money. We are called a middle income country, and we want our people to earn much higher. What we needed to do was to balance between those people who are earning very little today. We must remember that the national minimum wage is going to increase the income of over 6.6 million working South Africans.
Well, the president also there speaking about the infrastructure needs of the country, spoke about, for instance, some of the strides that has been made. If you look at some infrastructure, some communities, at least they have houses that have been supplied by government, but he also acknowledges that there are some shortcomings, and these shortcomings obviously have to do with issues of infrastructure. But he also spoke about business and saying that the business that the government is going to be working with are those businesses who make sure that once they get these projects to implement and roll out some of these infrastructure programs, that indeed they do what is expected of them. Let's just take a listen.
Ditjhelete tseo tse ntse di lahleha hohle mmuso re batla hore di khutliswe ditjhelete tseno di tle di tlo aha matamo ana. Ditjhelete tseno re tla di latela re be re di fumane ka hobane re batla hore di tlo sebeletsa setjhaba sa heso. Eska ba ditjhelete tse sebeletsang batho ba itseng fela. Ha re shebisisa hantle re fumana hore tjhelete e teng naheng ena ya rona. Tjhelete eo e le nna ke ikemiseditse hore e be tjhelete e sebeletsang setjhaba.
The president there promising that they will go for that money that has been stolen, and that money must be returned to the people. Here's another issue, and this has of course been a topical issue since the ANC's elective conference, and it's a resolution around land expropriation without compensation. We know of course in February already, after the State of the Nation address, and of course there was that debate in Parliament around the land expropriation without compensation, and it was adopted that Section 25 of the Constitution should be amended recommended, and listening to President Cyril Ramaphosa here speaking about that resolution, also evoking the memory of 1955, where the Congress of the People was meeting in Kliptown. It wasn't only the issue around a national minimum wage, it wasn't only the issue around education, but quite importantly, the issue around land and land expropriation without compensation, quite specifically. And this is what some parties, especially those who are on the extreme left side, have been calling for. And let's just take a listen to what the president said would be the plan of action.
As we redistribute land, we should be guided by what our forebears set out in the Freedom Charter, that the land must be shared amongst those who work it. And as we do all this, we must empower our people. As we empower them, government must support them, and we must ensure that we grow our economy, we grow our agricultural production as we effect this whole redistribution of land. This gives us great opportunities. This makes our resolution an important resolution that is implementable. This measure aims also to extend property rights to all South Africans, so that it is not only a few South Africans who have property rights. We earned our political rights, our democratic rights together collectively, and so must we all be given an opportunity to participate in the economic rights that are due to us as South Africans.
Well, President Cyril Ramaphosa there, after delivering his inaugural speech on Freedom Day, celebrating Freedom Day, and as you can see right now, those are visuals of the president as he's greeting all those who came out to the stadium here in Bloemfontein to come and celebrate Freedom Day, and of course those who have listened into the speech that he delivered earlier on, a speech that's touched on a whole range of issues. And I guess one of the issues that I could hear the spectators as well as those who have come out here cheering on was an issue around making sure that the money that has been stolen from government coffers is money that must be returned. And you know, of course, that this province in particular faced some of those allegations, and allegations around the issue around state capture and the Albertina dairy farm project as well, that some say has gone horribly wrong, and may just find itself being an issue that is on the agenda of the Commission of Inquiry into State Capture being led by the Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo. It'll be quite interesting as well to hear how many people from the Free State which the President has indicated is a province that is steep deep in the history of this country. If you speak about the ANC's first conference, the founding of the ANC here in the Free State in 1912. If you speak about the 1913 march being led by women also here against the past laws of the time, it is this province that is steep in the history of this country. And there you have it, President Cyril Ramaphosa saying his goodbyes. And from us here at the stadium, from the crew that has been with you since the start of the morning, since the crack of dawn, and the eggs that you saw in the morning, it's goodbye for now. I can tell you that the eggs are still safe and the bird is still there. It's goodbye for us. Bye-bye.
Just finished watching President Cyril Ramaphosa's speech at Dr. Molemela Stadium in Bloemfontein. Aldrin wrapping up most of the things that he said, touching on the history of South Africa and how far we have come, also reiterating the need that South Africans need to be united and see themselves as South Africans first. It's time for a short break. I'll have more news for you when we return. Do stay with us.